All right, everybody, welcome to the NFL Draft Day special, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. I am the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. Welcome to the program. I believe the Giants are going to take a quarterback in the first round of the NFL draft. There, I said it. I believe that the Giants are going to take a quarterback. I believe all signs point to the Giants selecting a QB. Of course, there are variables outside of their control. There is a possibility that the Giants can't make that trade to number 3 with the New England Patriots to get a quarterback like Drake May. He is the player that I have heard from sources the Giants covet most. Would not shock me if they ended up with J.J. McCarthy. Michael Penix Jr. remains the dark horse, a guy who I have been tracking all offseason and who has impressed me every step of the way, including the Senior Bowl, NFL Combine, although he didn't take a top 30 visit with the Giants. As I said in the New York Daily News, I heard Jaden Daniels, the LSU quarterback, even though the Giants spent ample time with him down at the Tigers Pro Day, I heard that his visit to the Giants did not go well. So if for some reason he falls, and we don't expect that to happen necessarily, but if some reason he falls, I personally, based on what I've been told, do not expect him to be the Giants selection. Of course, I think that is ultimately going to be a moot point. All right. So let me get into some of my headlines, guys, here, and then I'm going to take all of your questions. Remember, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker to have your comment or question elevated to the top of the chat. It's a great way to support the podcast and our lives here, and to jump right into the queue and be addressed immediately. If you're not going to purchase a super chat or a super sticker, you can support our channel in other ways. You can simply hit the like button, and that will help the YouTube algorithm tell everybody out there that this is live and running. I am going up until 1 o'clock, so at least an hour until I have a scheduled call. And then, depending on how we are doing here, I may leave it running, just mute myself while we're on the call, and then come back to you guys after I get off that scheduled call and keep going. We will see how we're doing. We'll see what kind of momentum we have. We have Jacob Petruzzi saying, smash that like and sub button for Pat. That's a great reminder. Jacob, thank you so much for telling everybody to do that. Thank you for always jumping in at the top of the threads and reminding everyone. Grim Silo purchases a $2 super chat and says, Pretty Ricky thinks Pat's trade out or go J.J. McCarthy. So he's talking about Ricky is somebody on Twitter, he's anonymous, who has been taking the Twitter NFL verse by storm recently, seemingly having some insight into some either contracts that are developing or about to be signed or movement that is about to happen. Definitely, even though he's not on the NFL insider radar, we have seen over the last week or so different tweets and reports from this anonymous person named Ricky, as Grim is talking about, who has seemingly hit ahead of time on things that we have seen from known insiders and verified insiders on social media. So Grim Silo says Pretty Ricky thinks Pat's trade out or go JJ. And of course, if I am telling you guys that I hear Drake May as the Giants quarterback and the one they want, then maybe that sets up well to get their man. But let me tell you and lay out what I think is going to happen tonight. And this is just one man's opinion and me forming a prediction, a hypothetical scenario that I could see things going in, but really not just circling on one specific player or any specific piece of information that I have heard. And I've delivered these things to you guys. The J.J. McCarthy Easter Sunday workout in Ann Arbor, the Drake May private workout, the fact that he's the Giants guy, the top quarterback that they appear to covet. All of those things are important information that has supported us as we go, leading us to this potential scenario where the Giants land the next quarterback. But I want to start here. And I wrote this for the New York Daily News. You can pick it up on newsstands anywhere, or you can go to the NY Daily News website on the Giants, NFL, or sports pages and read it. But from my vantage point, it's important when the draft gets here and when we're on draft day to take a 30,000-foot view of where we stand and what has happened to bring us to this point. The Giants hold the number 6 overall pick, right? That's great. And the Giants are in premier position to add a key player. And wide receivers have come up. Offensive linemen, of course, you can never argue with being a team that gave up the second most sacks in NFL history, taking an offensive lineman. However, from my vantage point, all of the Giants' signs, variables, and indicators point to a QB. John Mara came out at the owners' meetings and supported the idea of selecting a quarterback. He said if Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll fall in love with a QB, he's okay with them not only taking one at 6, but trading up for one if they feel like it's necessary. John Mara also told us that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and the Giants' decision makers told him that this is one of the best quarterback classes they've seen come out of college in years. The Giants' current quarterback room is Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito. Joe Schoen said he's comfortable with that quarterback room going into the season, but listing DeVito in that group doesn't pass the smell test because while he was the quarterback while they won 3 straight games late last season to win themselves out of the top few picks of this draft, we all know based on what the coaches felt watching him practice early on in training camp, etc., going all the way up to how they had to protect him once he was in the games, that he is not viewed as an ideal or even capable starter for an NFL team looking to win games. And that's not an insult to Tommy, but he's an undrafted free agent. He put in his time well while he was there. He worked hard, and I'm glad for him that he's capitalized on that. But that's not a solution to the Giants' future quarterback position. So that brings us to last fall. Joe Schoen scouting quarterbacks like Drake May and Caleb Williams heavily. The belief by people around the league that Joe Schoen and the Giants were all over Caleb Williams from USC until they fell out of that number 1 pick sweepstakes and area, that he would have been their guy. Of course, the Chicago Bears at number 1, essentially people just waiting for the draft to start for that card to be turned in. I'm sure the NFL will make them wait until their time is up. But the Giants starting from there, leading to the Russell Wilson visit right at the kickoff of free agency. I know Russell Wilson isn't the player that he used to be, but you don't bring in a player like Russell Wilson. Not to mention, Russell Wilson does not make the time to walk into the Giants building unless he thinks that there is an opportunity to play for them. And yes, he was not guaranteed a starting spot with the Giants, which is why he ended up going to Pittsburgh and signing there. But the idea that there was a chance for him to earn playing time, to play significant time in New York, he at least explored that opportunity and that option. They signed Drew Lock, and there's playing times incentives in that contract. The Giants targeted their entire pre-draft process. Yes, they scouted the top receivers. Yes, they scouted these offensive linemen. Carmen Brasillo looking at Joe Alt from Notre Dame. They didn't overlook positions of need or other positions at the top of the draft. But the fact of the matter is the Giants have not scouted quarterbacks like this previously. They did not scout the quarterbacks like this in last year. They did not scout them. They were not all over them in this way. Yes, quarterbacks are always a part of the process, but they were not all over them like they are now. Suggesting that this is no different of a process than it was before is incorrect. Joe Schoen, remember, was Brandon Beane's assistant GM for that double trade up for Josh Allen. Brian Daboll is on the hot seat and is expected to call plays on offense. And if he can call plays capably, help the offense improve while also developing a quarterback for the future, a Green Bay type model that I can tell you forthright, this is something that the Giants would love to do. Bring in a quarterback who doesn't necessarily have to play right away, but they can groom for the future. This is a very real thing that we are looking at when it comes to the Giants, as far as not only the potential plan, but the ideal plan for how this could work out for them to transition off a Daniel Jones contract and an injury-riddled career recently. And let's just be honest, this is a fact. And I'm not saying this in any judgmental way. The Giants, when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll took over this team, The design was for them to move on from Daniel Jones most likely and select a quarterback of their own. But they, of course, gave Daniel Jones all the ability and opportunity, and Brian Daboll helped coach him up in an effort to give him a chance to earn his next contract. And Daniel Jones, credit to him, stepped up and proved the Giants' confidence in him, even if it was wavering and basically hanging by a thread, correct. Now, the Giants made their mistake if they really did ultimately view this as we're going to move on eventually at some point. They made a huge mistake when they were looking at possibly tagging Daniel Jones and signing Saquon Barkley to a multi-year extension. And when they couldn't get multi-year extension done with Barkley, they flip it on its head. They give Daniel Jones the blockbuster contract and they tag Saquon Barkley. Now that's looking like in more ways than one, it's backfiring on them. But Rich Eisen doesn't say that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones. He's not making something up. That's a reputable NFL host and reporter putting out something that he's hearing, buyer's remorse. And Rich Eisen just kind of put an official tag on things that I was hearing already early in the offseason. The idea that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were laying the tracks for eventually moving on from Daniel Jones coming off of last year, even though, of course, they did not create a sufficient offensive line or support structure around Daniel to give him the optimal choice last year, not to mention a lack of offensive weapons. The Darren Waller trade didn't work out and so on. But we're not here to talk about what happened in the past, right? We're here to talk about the ramifications of the future. And let's see. I see you guys talking to me. I will get to all your questions, and I see that some things are popping on Twitter and on social media. But I want to address this because this was something that you all asked me about several times, and I told you I would get the accurate answer before I ended up talking about it on the record and definitively. And that is the ramifications of Daniel Jones' injury guarantee for 2025. And to be totally honest with you guys, even after having conversation with cap experts yesterday, I still slightly mischaracterized it in the New York Daily News print edition today. I ended up making more calls this morning and double checking it and confirming and solidifying what the numbers look like, because I knew when I came on here, especially, I had to have it ready for you guys. So here's the deal with Daniel Jones and why, with all my other reasons for arguing about the Giants and Drake May and quarterback, and why if you don't think they're going quarterback, you're just ignoring everything that's happened this offseason, right? So we've gotten to this point. The other factor here is Daniel Jones. Here's Daniel Jones' contract. He has a fully guaranteed $35.5 million salary this season. Next year in 2025, he has a $30 million salary. None of it is guaranteed. However, $23 million of that 30 is guaranteed for injury. That means if Daniel Jones plays and gets hurt this year, or gets hurt in a Giant practice or on their premises while he's working out, that means that the Giants would owe him $23 million in 2025 on that injury guarantee. Now, another element of that guarantee is this. If Jones is on the roster on the 5th day of the league year next year, he locks in $12 million of that 30 as guaranteed for skill and cap. So you can guarantee money for skill, injury, or cap, or some combination of the three. So follow me. 2025 Daniel Jones salary, $30 million, not guaranteed. If he gets hurt this year, $23 million of the 30 is guaranteed. So that's incentive to either not play Daniel, possibly, or not have him on the roster, right? Financially. Just throwing that out there, right? If Daniel doesn't get hurt this year and the Giants keep him on the roster into the 5th day of March of the NFL league year in mid-March next year, I believe it's March 20th, he locks in $12 million of that 30 as guaranteed for skill and cap. So regardless of injury, right? Then 23 minus 12, the remaining 11 million that could be guaranteed remains guaranteed for injury if he plays next year in 2025, the following season. So I hope that made sense. If it doesn't, we'll go back over it a little bit later. But all of this is to say, the Giants have $23 million and 23 million reasons why it is dangerous for them to put Daniel Jones on the field this year, especially if they are as aggressively pursuing moving on from him as they are. Now, I'm not reporting this is going to happen, but I'm just putting this out there because these are hypothetical scenarios you talk about when you talk with cap experts and people about how this could go. Daniel Jones, if the Giants were to cut, right, trading a guy who's hurt right now, rehabbing, that's a moot point, it seems. But cutting a player like Daniel Jones or not playing him and having him participate at all this year, the Giants would have incentive to do that. They would have financial incentive to do that. And if you cut him and made him a post-June 1 cut, presuming you didn't use your 2 allowed post-June cuts on other players prior or already or on somebody else, you could reduce the dead cap hit, even though it would still be very high. Okay? Last thing on the salary cap, and then I'm going to get into your questions. And thank you all for being here on the NFL Draft Day special, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. The last ramification financially of this is, everybody. So here we go. If you draft this is one advantage of drafting a first-round quarterback now. Like, let's say it's Drake May, okay? If you draft a first-round quarterback now, okay, 66% of the rookie contract gets paid out in year 1. And obviously those contracts are they're slotted by the NFL wage scale. They're set in stone based on where the quarterback is selected, where the player is selected. So Daniel Jones making $35.5 million guaranteed this year, nothing guaranteed next year unless he gets hurt, okay? But if you draft Drake May or JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix or whatever, if you draft one of those players, right, and you absorb their most significant financial hit now, along with Daniel Jones' $35.5 million. So let's call that 66% for Drake May, $20 million this year that you're paying out. Yes, you'd be eating $55.5 million for 2 of the quarterbacks on your roster now. And given the fact that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have some pressure on them, that might be tough to do. But here's the advantage, roster building wise. Next year, 2025, Daniel Jones, assuming you're cutting him and he's gone, he's off the roster. Let's assume he's not getting that injury guarantee for one reason or another. Now you're away from Drake May's most expensive year, from the bulk, from 66% of his contract you already paid out in year 1 in 2024. And Daniel Jones's contract is gone. And Drew Lock, who signed a 1-year deal, is not on your roster unless you're re-signing him. But essentially, you're on now the rookie quarterback contract that the Texans and these other teams can be advantageous for you to build your team and compete because you have more cap space to spend elsewhere. If you don't have that elite quarterback, then the next best thing is to have a good quarterback on a cheap rookie contract who you can build around. And sometimes, depending on the organization, right, it's really hard to find Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. So unless you have that guy, really one of the more advantageous ways to build a team in the NFL, especially when GM and head coach clocks are so much quicker and the sand runs out faster than it used to and that it ever has, that is a way and an argument for financially drafting that quarterback. So I'm not saying all those things are definitely going to happen, but this is the way I see the landscape of what the Giants are looking at on their roster and the way that this could go. Okay. Now, let's get into your queue. Jacob says, and guys, I will get to everything you're seeing on social media. Don't worry. And like I said, we are sitting here at 12:20 Eastern. We are talking about why I believe it's quarterback, and you're ignoring the signs if it's not. And of course, it could be another position based on how the rest of the board falls. But I believe that the Giants are trying to get a QB. They're trying hard. And if they don't, it's not going to be because they were trying hard. But I'm just planting my flag on QB because nothing about their process starting from last fall and even starting from when they arrived here in New York in the first place, it all points to a quarterback. All right, I'll get right back to you, Jacob, but we have a major super chat, a $10 one coming in from Grim Silo saying, Pat, could you see a three-way trade with the Patriots, Cardinals, and the Giants so the Patriots still get J.J. McCarthy? Or possibly the Patriots draft Drake May, and then we swap, then we draft J.J. McCarthy, and we sent J.J. with some pick and a QB swap, would be similar to Eli and Rivers. Grim Silo, I love where your head's at. You're kind of repeating history on the Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers deal in a way with the Chargers and the Giants. I talked to Sal Paolantonio, the great ESPN reporter, who is entering his 30th NFL draft and his 32nd NFL season now. And we talked about that on the podcast. He was the one who broke the news of the Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers trade along with Ed Werder at ESPN. And these are the things that we have to keep in mind. And Grim Silo, I love where your head's at. I don't think it would be crazy for us to be returning to this chat rewind later and kind of putting your chat and your comment up at the top. In fact, I may even throw this comment up on social media for everybody to illustrate the various interesting and intriguing ways that this could happen. Grim Silo, thank you for that. Really pushing this forward, conversation forward along. You're starting to sound like a GM in the room yourself. And also, I do think you bring up a really good point, which is that for the New England Patriots to make that trade, to let a team like the Giants come up and get Drake May, you are going to likely need to protect your turf against the Minnesota Vikings. So that would be a way for you to do so, would be to orchestrate a 3-team deal so that you're moving out of 3, but getting back to 4 and not losing out to Minnesota. I will tell you this too. There's plenty of people who think the Patriots are going to stay at 3 and take a guy like Drake May. Or is it J.J. McCarthy? There's other people who believe that the Arizona Cardinals at 4 are a team who ultimately would love to just stay there and take a receiver. I was just talking to an executive in the NFL who actually believes that in that scenario, which at the moment still feels more likely than not, right? Because you do have to orchestrate a complicated and expensive trade to move up to 3. So let's say, hypothetically, Grim and everybody, that trade doesn't come to pass at 3. So let's say it goes Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, 1, 2, 3, but the Giants still are comfortable with J.J. McCarthy. Let's just say it's him, okay? Or is it Michael Penix? Let's say it's J.J. McCarthy, okay? There are people, there was one executive I was just talking to who thinks that the Cardinals would actually stay at 4, not being willing to trade out all the way to 11 with Minnesota, and also just not wanting to lose out on their top receiver and take a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors. If that happens, this one personnel executive said that he thinks the Giants most likely trade up is with the Chargers because the Chargers could get assets and only move a pick back and still get the player they were already going to take at 5, but the Giants are protecting their turf for the quarterback they want from the Vikings coming from behind, coming from the Denver Broncos, possibly the Las Vegas Raiders, and protecting your turf in that way. So this was one perfect example from somebody in the league, a perfect personnel executive on a team, and that was their illustration of how one of the scenarios could go. And one of our loyal listeners from down in Florida, if you guys remember correctly, told us a few live chats ago. Do you remember this? That he identified and heard in the owners' meetings, and we weren't there. But do you remember? I think it's George, I believe is his name. Apologies if I got that wrong. I believe his first name is George. He brought up that he said he saw Joe Shane and Joe Ortiz talking about that they would work out a potential deal and they'd be ready to make it in a certain scenario. So that was a loyal fan and follower on this channel, throwing that out here to us. I don't have any way of confirming that, but I am telling you that a personnel executive just separately and independently illustrated that type of scenario to me just a half hour ago. So, Grim, like I said, definitely going to try to promote your comment right here, because I think it really is an intelligent way of thinking about different avenues for this to happen. And just as a reminder, guys, my pick for who the Giants are going to take is Drake May. I think they're trying to get aggressive to go get up and get him. And the North Carolina quarterback. And I do think the quarterback position in general, too, even if they can't get May, I still think they're taking one. But May, to me, is the guy. Jacob says, Pat, is Michael Penix Jr. stuff legit? You would have to think if there was significant interest, we would have given him a 30 visit. It's also possible that Joe Schoen, who is very attuned right now to smokescreens and rumors and trying to keep things close to the vest, could be that they did their homework diligently on him, but didn't want to give away how strong that interest was, and therefore did things in other ways. And then maybe it was unorthodox, but they found other ways, let's say for John Mara to meet him and for ownership to get comfortable. There's always the possibility. I do agree that hypothetically or theoretically, when you just hear that, you do think it's less likely than more likely that he's their guy based on that. But to me, this is why I said step away from everything and don't let all the little details cloud your thinking of, and this is what me talking to myself as I'm leading into this draft. Get away from the minutia and open your eyes to what you've seen, right? How good is the player? How much better is he than that player? How much would he help the Giants immediately? Could he help save their jobs because he's automatically the best quarterback in the room? Did they send basically their entire organization out to have dinner with him and watch his pro day, right? All of these things. Didn't Shea Tierney, the quarterback coach with him on the field at both the Senior Bowl and NFL Combine? Like, these are things that just, didn't John Mara say that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll love this quarterback class? Didn't he say, let's bring in someone and compete with Daniel Jones? Like, all of those things. I know I'm getting demonstrative, but I'm so passionate about, stop ignoring the signs. And that's me talking to myself, not to you, but like, I think I know as fans too. And like, I know I feel this way as a reporter talking to people right now and hours away now from the draft's first round, but it's so easy to drive yourself crazy leading up to this about what's going to happen and what it's going to look like. Right. And I think that a healthier way to go about your day is to step back and say, what are the headlines of what the Giants did, looked into, and were interested in, and where is it ultimately going to go? Now, of course, you guys could be in my mentions in 9 hours saying, Pat, they went wide receiver. You told us we were going to go quarterback. What are you talking about? But of course, there are a lot of variables. And, you guys know as well as I do, takes two to tango. And then nobody has access to exactly where these quarterbacks slot. Giants, we like JJ McCarthy, but we only really would have taken him if he was mid-first round. And so Drake May was the only guy we were going to take up high, right? Or whatever. We don't know those exact details, player by player exactly. Joe Schoen actually went on the offensive, seems to be a PR strategy of his and the Giants in recent months, trying to kind of get their own narrative out there before they feel like another one is, or combat ones that are already there. And in the interview he did in-house with Giants media this week, he said that he has 15 first-round player grades. So he said they had 11 last year and they have 15 this year. Jacob says, you think the McCarthy smoke is fire, or is it the Giants making other teams think they're going QB so they can get Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is Odunze really above Neighbors? Jacob, I have to admit, I don't know. We're going to find out on that. I think they're going quarterback. That's what I think. Let's see. We talked about a possible 3-team trade. Savage Steve says, so as a Giants fan, I feel that what some people are missing about the Giants trading up for a QB is that it looks like the Commanders are going to take Jaden Daniels, and that Brian Daboll looking at the QBs in his division and saying we need a guy because Daniel would be the 4th best in his division. So they need to get a guy just to compete within the division. I agree. Savage Steve, I'm liking that. I'm liking all of those tweets and all of those comments. Great point, Savage Steve. Jacob says the rumored 3-team trade is Arizona Giants and New England. Yep, talked about that. Candyman says my board is in. What they'll do and what I want. Giants smokescreen is May. They want JJ, but Patriots not moving. So trade with Arizona and draft JJ. Candyman, that's very possible. That's very possible. But let me be clear about this too. Like, I think, as a fun exercise, and to me, I don't have a problem just planting my flag on who I think it's going to be. Like the Andrew Thomas year, it was between Andrew and Tristan Wirfs, and I nailed it down to those two. And then right before the pick, really, kind of found out, okay, it's Andrew. But I knew it was going to be one of those two players. And then it was and really there were different people in the Giants decision-making front office there that there were certain people who wanted Wirfs. There were certain people who wanted Thomas, ended up being Thomas, but narrowed it down to that group. Right. And so Candy, I guess what I would say is I'm staking my name, just on Drake May based on what I've heard, but I obviously have information that they like JJ McCarthy as well. I personally think based on what I've heard, if I just went on the people that I trusted and what they told me, I would say May's higher on their board, and it's not a smokescreen for JJ. May's the guy. But it would not shock me, and I want to be clear about this. What I'm ultimately saying is the Giants, I believe, go quarterback. And I do believe it's Drake May. But if it's JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr., it won't knock me on my butt. It'll just be, oh, yeah, okay, so Drake May was gone, so they took him. Or, yeah, they ended up kind of letting that May thing float out there. They like McCarthy, right? But I think what I would be fooled by is them having some of these key guys around and not taking one. Though ultimately, of course, what their roster looks like, you can make an argument for a lot of things. Candyman says JJ available I want JJ available at 6. Trade down with Vikings to grab Kenyon Mitchell at 11, best wide receiver at 23. That would give you a corner and a wide receiver, but it would not address the quarterback position. And again, I think those signs point there, but you could be right, Candy. Simeon says, I was certain the Giants would take a wide receiver until I woke up this morning. Everything, including prospect visits, free agent signings, and coaching changes, tells me they are preparing for a new young QB. I agree. Simeon says the Giants will be drafting who they think is the future QB for this team and the face of the squad on next season's 100th anniversary squad. I agree. Sal Powell agrees as well. I think that's a really interesting point by Sal Powell, and I agree with you, Simeon. Jackie Chan, good to see you. Go Big Blue, he says. British Gridiron Film says, Pat, thanks for hosting this at a time that works for us across the pond. You got it, British. I told you I would make this available for our international fans as well. He says, hopefully we get the Giants in London or Germany again soon. Keep up the awesome work and content. British, I think you're going to see the Giants in Germany either this year or next year. I was, as of the owners' meetings, I know talking to people around the Giants, it sounded more likely it would be the following year rather than this year. But Giants-Panthers is still on the table until we hear otherwise this year, but we'll see. Looking forward to that hopefully being announced. I've been trying to break that news, but no one's letting it go. OG Knockout, what's going on, man? Alexander says, who's ready for JJ McCarthy to be a Giant? I am, if it happens that way. Jake May is who I'm staking my claim on. He's the back page of the Daily News today. But as I noted in the story, if it's JJ, if it's Michael Penix Jr., it wouldn't shock me. Joel says, Pat, any chance Daniel Jones could be part of a trade package, even though his value isn't that great at the moment, especially coming off an ACL injury? Boy, I think that would be the Giants' ideal scenario if he was part of a trade package, to be honest with you. I don't know if someone would take him as part of that package, but I think that would be an ideal scenario. Alexander says, why trade him when we can use him as a bridge? Because Drew Lock's here as the bridge. Hunter says, I just hope we don't trade next year's first. That is the Panthers trade from last year all over again with the Bears. A lot of pressure on this GM and coach, though, but there are people who share your opinion, and ultimately the Giants might share your opinion, Hunter. British says, sacks are a QB stat, definitely for Tommy DeVito. OG Knockout says, I'm just a fan. I hope the Giants don't miss on this year's draft. I'm sick of seeing this team lose it year after year. I agree. British, back to your comment there. You're right. It is a QB stat in some ways, but the Giants' offensive line last year was an abject disaster, and I feel comfortable saying this. I said it at the time, especially when we were going into that Miami Dolphins game on the road. I said that this is the worst offensive line I've seen the Giants trot out since I was on the beat in 2016 for that game. Chris says, let's see. Chris also, guy thought Trevor. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Okay. Mark Sullivan. Mark, I think I might have skipped over your super chat. Sorry about that. Mark Sullivan, who always supports this channel. Thank you, Mark. He checks in with a $5 super chat. He says, it concerns me that Chris Sims, who has a very good track record with the draft, thinks Drake May at number 6, which would be a monumental mistake. I don't, Mark, here's what I'll say about that. And thank you again for your support. Sorry for not jumping to you in the queue there. A lot happening as I peek down at the phone and peek at the queue. So sorry about that. But here's what I would say about that. As you do reporting and work on these quarterbacks, and we all love football. We watch football. You see some of these college games. You watch the games during the spring, get an idea who these players are as well. And you talk to people you trust. To me, these teams, and listen, these teams aren't experts at it as well, right? Because it's basically like a less than 50% hit rate on guys even being capable players and starters in the NFL drafting quarterbacks high. So it's no guarantee. But from my vantage point, you're paying Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, to make this decision. You're paying ultimately Joe Shane and Brian Daboll to make this decision. And whoever, if they feel, based on all their diligent work they've done, if they feel that that is landing them on a certain player and they believe, I have no problem at all. In fact, I encourage a team, stake your claim, put your money where your mouth is. Go pick your quarterback. Go get your guy. I'm not going to sit here if they draft Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr. and tell you this guy's not going to pan out. I don't know that. And I'm not going to pretend I know that. The one thing I do believe on McCarthy, but it's not about JJ. Just in theory, do I agree usually that people say, well, he was limited in what they did on the offense. They didn't use him in a certain way because they had what they had around him. Usually, if you have a great quarterback who can unleash it and dominate, you're throwing the ball and using him. There's no reason not to use him, right? So I'm skeptical about that part of that evaluation. But I'm not an expert on whether McCarthy is going to be something more than what he is now. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know how these quarterbacks are going to work out. I will say Chris Sims and Phil Sims, I thought, interestingly enough, on their Sims Complete podcast on the Believe Network, they ranked Michael Penix Jr. Phil has him third in this quarterback class behind Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. And Matt has him ranked second behind only Caleb Williams in this class. They both had Drake May ranked fifth on their quarterback board. Those are just two evaluators, but obviously respected ones. Alexander says, Pat, you are saying, and people are realizing all the signs are pointing to this, and they have been since the start of the offseason. Right, correct. Jacob says Ricky, the insider we were just talking about earlier on X, seems to think the Giants are close to trading for Brandon Aiyuk with the Niners. Is there any indication on your end? He asks. I have no insight on that being close. I do think that based on Joe Shane's aggressiveness with the Brian Burns trade and given the pressure on the Giants to field a more competitive team, and also based on their lack of weapons on offense and the fact that I think they're trying to draft a quarterback, all of those signs make an Aiyuk trade and signing sound like something that would be possible. Now, are you expending assets, though, on both Brandon Aiyuk and a quarterback trade up at the same time in addition to that contract? That's a lot, right? Do they have that? How will they make all those pieces fit? Wouldn't shock me, but I don't have any specific insight into that happening like ASAP. But like I said, Ricky's been on it. Ricky's been on it. I do have calls and messages out on Brandon Aiyuk, though, just so you know. Jacob says, Pat's going to break news today on today's live. We'll see. Sometimes we do. You know that, Jacob. Danny says, Chris Sims is just diluting the product. He knows the Giants are high on him. You never know where certain information is coming from. Are there agendas? Chris is very good, though, and reputable. Although he did, interestingly enough, I believe, had Mac Jones going high to the Niners, the draft they took Trey Lance. It turned out that his friend Kyle Shanahan did want Mac Jones, but it ended up that others in the front office convinced them to take Trey Lance instead. Adam Peters, who holds the number 2 overall pick with Washington, being one of them. Jacob says he tagged me in a tweet to make sure I saw it about Drake May and the Giants. British says if they do take a wide receiver and Drake and JJ May are on the board, this is the ultimate smokescreen. Yeah, that British, I would that wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. Grim Silo says May is the guy. That's what I was told by a couple of people, especially a trusted source of mine 2 weeks ago. That was the first time I heard it, like stamped by somebody who I trusted, knew where this was going. Then again, here's a tweet from Tom Curran, who I trust, from Boston, NBC Sports Boston, and you should trust too. He tweeted about an hour and a half ago or so, almost 2 hours ago now, expect the Patriots to take Tom Curran reported, expect the Patriots to take Drake May at number 3, unless someone, Vikings or Giants, makes them an offer they just can't refuse. So what I heard is that if a trade happens, it's going to happen when the Patriots are on the clock. So we're going to have to wait, right? Because people do want to solidify and confirm that the Commanders are going Jaden Daniels after Caleb Williams goes 1 to the Bears before anything goes down. And obviously Grim Silo painted the picture of a possible 3-way trade with Arizona. So let's say the Patriots could protect J.J. McCarthy from the Vikings in the event that they trade back to 6. I do personally believe, I know there's a huge debate on this. I do personally believe that the Giants have an advantage in being at 6 versus the Vikings being at 11, even though the Vikings have those 2 firsts. Given this draft and the fact that teams typically have first round grades on players anywhere from 15 to 18 is usually the range that teams settle on, though some teams could have fewer, some teams could have higher. But having that, is that 23rd pick really viewed even just as a high second more by a team in this draft versus an extra first, right? And so, yes, they have that extra asset, but not only is that maybe not as highly worth it as it would be in the past, but also going back to 11, if you're Arizona or you're New England, you're trading back out of a cluster of elite players. So that's something to look for. James says, I don't think they take a QB tonight. I really think you're wrong, Pat. James, I'll be the first one to admit it if I am. And like I said, I mean, there are obviously scenarios that could lead to that, to them not taking a quarterback based on whether they like guys, but at a certain level, this and that. But I just feel like the 30,000-foot view screams quarterback. And I laid that argument out at the beginning of this, but I could do that again as we get to the home stretch. It is 12:45 Eastern now. We're going to go up until 1 o'clock. I have a scheduled call at 1. I will leave this chat running at 1 o'clock for you guys to talk amongst yourself. If news breaks, I can jump back on and we can talk about it more. But my plan is, if we have a lot of people still in here, continuing the conversation and you guys want, after that call is over, I will jump back in and we can continue the chat a little bit before I get myself ready to head over to the Giants facility in East Rutherford, which is where I will be for the duration of the first round of the NFL draft. And then depending on how late we go tonight, Thursday night, if we have time and availability and flexibility after the draft, we can try to do another live after the draft to break it down. If it's too late and if a lot of things are flying and it's hard to kind of nail something like that down, then we will do something early in the morning on Tuesday. But I plan to try to go live, even if it's from my phone, doing this same type of thing here, Talkin Ball Live, but doing it at the facility. I plan to go live from the East Rutherford facility, or if I'm racing back here at my house in New Jersey, and we will try our best after the draft to break it down live on Talkin Ball. Jacob says, Pat, I guess Drake May didn't tell you to F off like the Harrison camp did. That's right. If you guys want to check it out, I did an interview, a phoner with Drake May from a Raising Cane's event in Detroit when he was there at the NFL draft, when he arrived on Tuesday, I believe it was. and some interesting comments, and actually some interesting non-comments, especially when I asked him if he had met John Mara and what that meeting was look like. And he almost got a little nervous, and he was respectful, but he said, I don't really want to talk about that, sir. It was essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically the gist of what he said. So that was interesting to me. Sonny D says, if we don't go QB, we are screwed. Draft JJ or Michael Penix Jr. Joey B Comedy checking in. He says, what's up, boys? I'm in the building on my way down to MetLife right now. Can't wait for this draft. I do not want JJ McCarthy. I guess I'm okay with Drake May, but if we don't get him, go wide receiver. Joey B, thanks for checking in. And guys, I told Joe, because he's such a loyal follower and a fan who continues to promote us on Instagram, here on YouTube, and all across social media, I wanted to promote something he's doing. So this Friday, April 26th, Joe, he's the champion, reigning champion, Joe Becker, will be at Reds in Carlstadt, New Jersey, 317 Washington Avenue. That's Friday night, April 26th. Doors open at 8 p.m. Show is 9 p.m. $20 cover, $25 the night of a show. And Joe is going to be there for the Meadowlands Comedy Festival. It's the Meadowlands Comedy Festival Champion Show. And go check out Joe if you're around in East Rutherford, if you're in New Jersey, in Carlstadt on Friday night. Joe is a really funny guy and a huge supporter of this podcast, and wanted to shout him out there. All right, let's get back into the queue. Novice of Things says, follow the money. If Daniel Jones was long-term, why the contract structure and no restructure? AT in play for trade up to number 3 with no restructure with him. You're saying Andrew Thomas in play to trade away? Is that what you're saying? Not sure if you're suggesting that Andrew Thomas would be in play. That would not be something I would expect. That would be a surprise that I didn't have on my board. I'll admit that. Mark Sullivan says, do you think John Mara, Mark, thanks for the super chat again. Appreciate it. Do you think John Mara would blow his top if we give up assets to replace the guy they talked him into giving $60 million for? Mark, I feel like we asked John that question and he answered it, and I'm going to take him at his word that when he said that wouldn't stop him from wanting them to draft a QB if they felt like it was necessary, if they felt like somebody was there, their guy was there. Like, to me, that is that's the owner telling us. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that he was being dishonest about that when John Mara is a guy who, with us, from my experience, tells it straight, tells it like it is. So, from my vantage point, John Mara giving his blessing is John Mara giving his blessing. I know that it's still, when you sit back, despite what John said, it's easy to then kind of think about it and say, yeah, but wow, look at that commitment, right? And how do you really throw in the towel on a guy when you showed your commitment to him with that kind of contract? I think just because it was a mistake and you're owning up that it was a mistake. And Mark, I think really it comes down to, I thought Sal Powell, I know there were some Giants fans in comments of the podcast who were suggesting that they felt that the 100-year anniversary was not a legitimate reason why the Giants would take a quarterback. But you have to hear out what Sal Powell is saying there. He's not talking about, the number of the year dictates a certain thing. What he's talking about is the Giants' tradition and the pride in their franchise, and the fact that it does matter. If you know the Giants, it does matter to them on their 100th year anniversary, their centennial anniversary, that they are putting their best foot forward. That is a real thing. There's going to be a lot of fanfare. There's going to be a lot of, markings and historical context brought up and around the way the Giants are operating and who they are and what they look like on the field will matter in a big way, especially because recently they're one of the losingest franchises in the NFL. As Sal outlined in the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, our most recent episode, they are the second most losing team in the NFL in the last 7 years, only to the Jets, and it's close. So those things matter. Grim Silo says it would dope to be shouted out on social media. Grim, you got it. I'm going to get our our kind of social team on that. Let's see. And Alexander says, way to use your head, Grim, no doubt. All right, we got another super chat. Mike Egan checks in with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that support. If you have a comment or a question, please throw it out there, and I will answer it immediately. Memo checking in. What up, Pat? Big fan from Mexico. Yeah, Memo, thank you, man. Welcome back. He says, thanks for all the reporting during this crazy time. Hope we get our franchise QB tonight. Mike says, I have heard JJ compared to Mitch Trubisky. He needs everything right around him to be successful. What are your thoughts? Mike, one reason he's been compared to Mitch Trubisky, and I was there at the combine to see this a little bit, he was throwing, when he threw across his body to the left to that sideline, he was off target frequently. And then when he opened his body and threw it to the right sideline, he was on the money and it looked beautiful. And, that's kind of the running joke about Mitch Trubisky and, these guys, like they're like Derek Zoolander. They can't turn left, right? Now, that's just obviously a joke. JJ McCarthy, obviously, we know a lot of people that we trust, evaluators. Jim Harbaugh, I know he's got something invested in his guy being drafted high and being a great player and a great pro. But you just hear a lot of people around the league feeling like there's a higher ceiling for JJ McCarthy, that there's untapped potential there. And, I think I will say this, Mike. There are other people I talk to who I trust, who they do think JJ McCarthy could be a serviceable pro, but they see him as a flat out, like late first, early second, like more like a second round talent than a first. But what I said earlier is what I would continue to say as we talk here in this channel and during this Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard, NFL Draft Day special. Thanks for being here, guys. I'm the NFL columnist and Giants beat writer for the New York Daily News. We've been over 200 fans. I think we got almost up to 250 live at every point throughout this episode for the most part. And I'm thrilled by the support, flattered by it. But you guys are what's making this community go. By the way, we are over 2,000 subscribers now on the channel, on the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard channel, on PL on NFL. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. But I really can't thank you guys enough for helping us continue to build this. And as I always say while we're doing these chats and these lives, this is one of my favorite things to do. I look forward to them twice a week. We've been doing them Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. But this noon Eastern draft special was really a way, I think, to drive the conversation and understanding, as you guys know, that the information starts to trickle out a little closer towards the draft and it starts getting louder. And so we very well could be on here breaking news or reacting to news. And if you see me looking off screen, a lot of the times I'm looking at my phone and and I'm looking at some texts, some calls. And if I have to take a call, I'll mute it and take it. I do have a call, that I'm going to be taking relatively soon, but I will stay on camera. You guys can continue the conversation and then I'll jump back on and we will continue to talk and then wrap it up before I head to the Giants building. If you want to have your comment or question addressed immediately or first, you can spend money on a super chat or a super sticker, as Mike Egan did right here, asking about the Mitch Trubisky comp, and I will jump right to it. You'll jump to the top of the queue. I try to, as my best, to answer every question that is in the queue. That is why our chats really recently have been going over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, as I've been trying to give everybody a voice because I'm really grateful to you guys helping to build this. All right, let me try to get through these. Let's see. JJ is no Eli or Rivers, not even close, Tariq says. Tariq, that may be the case. I think what Grim Silo was saying is, could the Giants, Patriots, and Cardinals combine in a trade that enables two teams to get their quarterback the way that the Giants and Chargers did 20 years ago? That was more what he was saying. No Met says, if not May, do they draft JJ? Possibly. I am staking my claim on quarterback, so I would see that happening possibly, but we'll see. We don't know that for sure, but I think they're going QB, no Mets. I hope the Giants get outbid for May. And JJ says, Tariq. Alexander says, I prefer May, but if we get JJ, I will be happy to. The dude is a winner. Let's see. compete or replace, Tariq says, regarding the quarterback plan. We will see. No Met says it seems like the Giants are going to draft a QB in the first. I think so. Odds on Jerry Jones showing off the draft board again, says British. I would say don't bet on it, but you never know. He's up there in age and really doesn't give a you-know-what. Tariq says hopefully the QB talk was noise all along to pick Malik Neighbors. Scott Young says nobody knows how many of these quarterbacks are going to be every year. These kids get so built up and they rarely pan out. Let's hope it works out for all. Caleb and Jaden are the only QBs worth giving up assets for, says Tariq. Eric Garrison says, will Penix be there at 6? I believe he will. Eric says, wait for Arch Manning and build the roster. He's the same level as a prospect like Luck or Burrow. Arch Manning is better than all of these quarterbacks, Eric says. So if the Giants wanted Drake May all along, why didn't they just tank? John Mara doesn't tank, Eric. And, that's a fair argument, though. I think your question goes towards more like, why didn't they trade Saquon Barkley at the deadline, right? Why did they insist on trying to compete when the season was clearly already over and then essentially just win themselves out of the top quarterbacks in the class unless they trade up possibly? That's a fair point and a fair question. Alexander says Arch Manning hasn't even started a college game yet. Calm down. Tariq says JJ is a project and May is a project. Right, but the Giants, Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, getting a quarterback in the building who can develop while you have a bridge like Daniel Jones and or Drew Lock, and then grooming that young guy to take over, that could be the scenario they're looking at. It's the scenario I feel like they're looking at. Egan says, why is JJ better than Mitch Trubisky? Seems like he needs everything to be right around him or he is not going to be successful. He's won at every level, Mike. I mean, the Michigan team around him was great, but that doesn't necessarily mean everything has to be great around him for it to be good. But there are people who share your skepticism. Jerry says they thought they were tanking. No one expected Tommy DeVito. Right. Or no one expected the defense to force 6 turnovers. And what was it, 7 or is it 5 by the defense and 6 total with special teams, or 6 and 7 against Washington? Eric says, have you not seen Arch Manning in spring practice? Eric says, Arch Manning, 6'4", 4'6", 40, extraordinary arm. Remember, guys, Eli Manning and Drake May, a close relationship. He's been helping him prepare for this draft. Let's see. Jerry says, Pat, if the Chargers select a wide receiver, have they hinted at anyone in particular? I would think it would be Harrison or Neighbors. I have said all along that based on all these draft scenarios, it feels like the player that could be available to them or will be available to them, like no question would be available to them, is Rome Odunze, the Washington wide receiver. Like I think any way the draft board falls, I feel like Rome Odunze will be there at 6. But, Harrison or Neighbors, both guys that teams have number 1 on their respective boards, and both would be number 1 receivers in a draft where the other one wasn't in it. Does that make sense? Rockstar says, hey, Pat, would you think if they took a quarterback tonight, would there be any chance they get rid of Daniel before this season, just to be fair to both quarterbacks? Rockstar, I outlined that in the New York Daily News. It's up on the website now, but also in my intro to this podcast. So I'm getting a text in here. Give me 1 second, gentlemen and ladies. Rockstar, I'm going to leave your question up here on the queue. Continue the conversation, please. I'm going to leave this live in case news breaks. I have to take this call. When this call is over, I'm going to jump right back in here. I'm going to take Rockstar's question, and I'm going to keep going in the queue. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Hey, I'm back. We are. All right, we're back. Let's go. Let's go. Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard. Thanks for letting me take that call, everybody. Working the phones today, and let's start at the top. When we started this live chat, our NFL Draft Day special here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, I articulated to you my argument for why I believe the Giants are taking a quarterback this evening in the first round of the NFL Draft, and it really boils down to, and I'm going to get to Rockstar's question because it leads to that. It boils down to, from John Mara's comments to Joe Shane liking Caleb Williams at the start of the process and going to a ton of games for Williams and Drake May in the fall, to the J.J. McCarthy Easter Sunday private workout, a Drake May private workout. They went to Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix pro days, bringing the whole contingent with them and doing that homework, the diligence of the Giants at this position, scouting the quarterbacks like they did not the prior year. Spending time on this quarterback class like they haven't in the past. This has been a targeted, defined effort to secure what could be the next franchise quarterback for this team. In fact, I just saw Jimmy T, Slim Jim is funny, on Twitter, on X. He posted that Sal Powell just said the Giants are currently on the phones trying to get a deal done to move up. So that was the report that just came out from ESPN. So here we go. Let me see. Getting a text in. 1 second. All right. So to get to Rockstar's point, I listed all these reasons why it seems to me like if you avoid getting stuck in the minutia and you pull yourself out of it and you think about how the Giants have handled this process and you get to the Daniel Jones point. So Rockstar asks Pat, would you think if they took a QB tonight, would there be any chance they get rid of Daniel before this season, just to be fair to both quarterbacks? I do think there's a chance. In fact, based on Daniel's contract, I think financially it's the right play. Now, obviously, he's coming back from the injury. He has the 2 neck injuries plus the ACL he's rehabbing from. So a trade, right? Even though that I think the Giants, personally, this is just me talking. No one in there has told me, yeah, we're trading Daniel Jones. From my vantage point, I think they would like to trade Daniel if he was healthy and they were able. He's not healthy at the moment. But his contract is for the 2025 year. Daniel Jones has no money guaranteed in his $30 million base salary, but he has a $23 million injury guarantee. So if he gets hurt this year playing or working out of the Giants facility or practicing there, the Giants lock in $23 million owed to Daniel Jones in 2025. And so that would be an additional financial commitment to a player that it already looks like they're trying to move on from. They brought in Drew Lock, and Drew Lock was told he was going to have a chance to compete to play. John Schneider said that. It wasn't just me reporting that. John Schneider, the Seattle Seahawks GM, said that out loud on a radio station in Seattle, right? So all this adds up to, if you add Drake May or J.J. McCarthy on a rookie contract this year, you eat a ton of money in Daniel Jones' $35.5 million salary this year, plus the $20 million or so you're paying out to the rookie QB. But once that's over, now you're in the clear in 2025 financially in order to build your team better. Now, that said, there is pressure on Joe Shane and Brian Daboll this year to show some progress, not only in the players they're adding, but in the team and how they fare on the field, wins and losses. So that's a part of the equation as well. But Rockstar, yes. The answer to your question is yes, there's a chance. Hunter Keller says, ideal pick for tonight, wide receiver at 6, or trade back into the first for Michael Penix Jr. Eric says he thinks the Giants are going to go with Michael Penix Jr. Jerry says, could the Giants get Aiyuk without giving up a first-round pick? I think that's an interesting question. Like, if you're making a trade for Aiyuk, does that rule out your trade for the quarterback because you're spending the assets it would take to go get the quarterback on Aiyuk? Or are you taking a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr. at 6? Or even May, does he fall to 6? And then you can use that asset on Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know that answer. It is going to be expensive, though, for Brandon Aiyuk. It would cost a significant asset. We'll see if it would be the first. I would think that the Giants trading a top possible 5 pick for a wide receiver, that's a lot, right? So you would be trying to use your 2. You did give up a 2 for Brian Burns. So if you're willing to pay Brandon Aiyuk the kind of contract that he's looking for, and other teams are not looking to outbid you on that, is that a way to use your second and not next year's first and get that player? Thanks for everybody who's joining us new and live here. This is the Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard podcast. So I am the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. And what we do here, there's a lot of people creating great Giants content out there, great fans, great people analyzing the team. But the difference here is that I am on the ground with the Giants day in and day out, as well as covering the NFL, league wide. I've been on the Giants and NFL beat since 2016. Giants beat writer the first few years there, and then with Gary Myers, leaving the Daily News and not being here, he did a great job of covering the whole league. But obviously that created opportunity as I built more sources around the league to spread my wings and to get more sources on these different teams and have kind of plug in to kind of the lay of the land when it comes to this sport and this team that you guys love so much and that we love following so much. And so I bring you guys breaking news on these channels, on these live chats. I bring you analysis and I bring you my latest information. Not afraid to stick my neck out and say what I think is going to happen in these drafts. And here are some of the things that I have heard and know, not just about the Giants, but about this NFL draft. I believe the Giants are trying to trade up all the way to even 3. And then I think, based on sources I've talked to, that Drake May is the guy. I do believe they're going quarterback, so it would not shock me if ultimately they end up with a J.J. McCarthy from Michigan or Michael Penix from Washington. If I had to rank them, I would say May, McCarthy, Penix as my most likely picks. May is the person I'm on the board with them taking ultimately. But here's a wild card. The New England Patriots at number 3. Jonathan and Robert Kraft. Them being the owners of that team, Bill Belichick is gone. They need a franchise quarterback. And remember this, not only do they need a franchise quarterback, however, they also are a team that, go back to a couple years ago, who did the New England Patriots draft? They drafted Mac Jones. That was a Kraft pick. That was a Kraft family preference. Bill Belichick in that draft, I'm on good authority, was eyeing Davis Mills in the 3rd round in that draft. And the Patriots end up going Mac Jones in the 1st. So when you think about that and you look at this board and you look at how the Patriots are operating, and that's the trade partner the Giants have at 3, yes, Elliott Wolf is now running personnel there. Yes, they have a new coach in Gerard Mayo, but really this is a Robert and Jonathan Kraft show. And this is talking to people around the league who, know how they operate and believe that that ownership's strong involvement will ultimately lead to them not trading out of 3 and drafting. Drake May sounds like the most likely pick based on what people think, but there's never been more uncertainty about what's going to happen. So is J.J. McCarthy ultimately the guy? Would they just take him at 3? And would the Giants then be able to trade up for Drake May either at 4 or 5? Also talked to a personnel executive recently who thinks that Arizona would actually end up staying in that scenario and taking a wide receiver. And then the Chargers would be the Giants trade up to 5 to protect themselves from the Minnesota Vikings and that quarterback. Salient says, Pat, it was reported on ESPN this morning that it was John Mara's decision to pay Daniel Jones against the wishes of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. What are your thoughts? Who reported that, Salient? And let me be very clear about this, Salient. If that is being put out there here on draft day, what does that tell you? That tells you that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are trying to get away and out of Daniel Jones and onto another quarterback. That confirms everything we are talking about. And the fact that that has trickled out before, Salient, and thank you for the super chat paying for that and getting on the board with that. If that confirms, right, what we're talking about, and it confirms that, one second, have to take this call, got to mute. All right, I'm back. Salient, thanks for that. This is a crazy day, guys. So that Salient, that was an interesting point. I will say this, Salient, and I didn't see that report on ESPN, but I will say that the fact that that has trickled out since the Jones deal was signed, and remember, it's only been a year. That tells me that there's an interesting dynamic to watch inside the Giants building. Like the idea that it would be strongly reported that ownership was getting in the way and that this was not the preference of the coach and the GM. That should all indicate to you and to us and reinforce our belief and understanding and the tea leaves that we are reading and the sources we are talking to. It reinforces that ultimately this regime, as we've been saying on this Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard podcast, and as we've been doing on these live chats, that we continue to tell you that this regime has been laying the groundwork for life without Daniel Jones at some point in the relatively near future. All right, let's get back into the queue. Astro says no quarterback equals no Super Bowl. Dable has seen Brady, Allen, etc. He knows what a franchise QB is. If he thinks May or McCarthy is the guy and they can get him, do it. Jones isn't it. Don't think they can go. They don't think they can, though. So wide receiver. Yes, Rec Laws notes that Drake May has been training with Eli Manning. That is an important point not to overlook. You don't think that they've been having conversations about what it's like in New York? You don't think Eli Manning, who works for the Giants and won 2 Super Bowls for them and is one of the most revered people in the history of the franchise and is also reporting for work at times in the building, isn't reporting back on a guy like this? VF says, get neighbors. If even Mahomes lost the Super Bowl when he was running for his life, DJ is problem number 74, as Chris Sims rightly says. Not an unreasonable statement, VF. 1 second. One minute. One thing I was just looking into was that Sal Powell report about the Giants working the phones, because I know there's a lot of things flying out there right now about people saying what the Giants are trying to do and can do or can't do, whatever. But Sal Powell is as reputable as they come. And so his report, the gist of his report on the Giants is this. This is where it stands. So what he reported on ESPN is that the Giants are continuing to work the phones as they have been with teams ahead of them. But Joe Shane, the Giants GM, told Sal Powell directly. So Sal Paolantonio is down at the Giants facility, these last couple of days covering the draft at ESPN. Shane told Sal Paolantonio directly that any trades that happen will happen on the clock. So that's what I was telling you guys, right? These trades are going to happen on the clock if they happen, because teams ahead of the Giants want to see which players get picked ahead of them first. So any teams entertaining trade offers from the Giants and other teams, they don't want to make a trade now because they're still waiting to see who gets selected ahead of them. So because of that, the Giants aren't making a trade right now as we sit here, but Shane and the Giants are making those calls and laying the groundwork just in case. So just to clarify that, that's where things stand. All right. Tariq says, I hope the Patriots ask for 4 first-round picks from the Giants for pick 3. Yeah, you don't want them doing it. Deilla says, how's it going, Pat? Thanks for coming on. Deilla, thanks for being here, man. British Gridiron says, what do you think we could get for Slayton trade, a 4th rounder? Interesting. I mean, based on what people have said about the lack of depth in this draft, I don't know. I guess you're trying to get something inside those top 4 rounds, right? And yeah, I mean, fourth's a pretty big hope, even with a player who has contributed as consistently as Slayton. It is a reasonable contract for a team to take on, though. So maybe you get a very late one. Sounds high to me, but that for a team to give up, That does sound like wishful thinking, but certainly not unfair for the Giants to ask. John likes Joe Milton in the later rounds. Joey B says, "Hey Pat, any chance you can give me a tour of the Giants war room tonight?" I would love one. And all the clips that you see on social media from the Giants, that's the extent of what we see in the war room. We are relegated to the media area, and we then go into the Giants building and get to talk directly with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll after they make their selections or trades or the rounds over or whatever the case may be. And so stay tuned to my X account, P Leonard NYDN, tonight, as well as my social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube here, PL on NFL. That's where you'll be seeing me most primarily on X, P Leonard NYDN, trying to report what I'm hearing about the draft, what I'm hearing about the Giants pick, and where things are going. And, and also I will be bringing to you guys firsthand what Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are saying about what they ended up doing in the draft, how they ended up operating and why they did or didn't do certain things. And then, like I said, follow me throughout the draft on all those channels. And then also trying to do some version of a YouTube live once the draft is over. All right. Killer Cam says there are reports that the Patriots are asking price to the Giants is pick 6, 47, and next year's first. If that's true, there's your deal. I take that for May all day. Definitely sideline DJ, cut, or trade him. Yeah, so there's no way for us to know for sure whether the Giants are going to bite the bullet and do something like that or not until it comes time. I personally believe that ultimately, if they feel strongly enough about a player like I do believe they do about Drake May, and I believe they are strong in the quarterback market and diligent about trying to get one, then I don't think that price would stop them. But we don't know for sure, but that's just my opinion. Daboll will sprinkle his magical pixie dust over his next quarterback, and boom, it's Super Bowl and Pro Bowls, baby. Optimistic view there, Tariq. But we can dream big. Novice says, yep, Bills did it for Allen. Two-Step 82 says, I can't believe how many fans are cheerleading wide receiver. How did OBJ work out? We need a quarterback who isn't a broken processor. Yeah, Two-Step, the Giants roster screams for so many needs at some really key positions that I understand people wanting several of these different things, right? Like, their lack of pass protection doesn't make it unreasonable for someone to say, let's just add another offensive lineman and make sure we don't get our quarterback killed, right? I just think anyone who thinks they're not drafting a quarterback is ignoring everything that's happened all offseason and even all of last season, which is my primary argument and primary reason for doing this show and the primary message I want to get across to you guys. I'll continue to get to some of your questions. Want to point out some other things for the first round worth watching. Okay. Namely, a couple tidbits talking to some other people around the league this morning. And these are some names that have jumped out to me talking to people that might go higher than even people believe. Laiatu Latu, the UCLA edge rusher, pass rusher. This is a guy that even though he has some medical concerns with the spinal fusion, the neck surgery, and the medical retirement earlier in college, people have a huge appreciation for his talent and ability, and I think he's going to be drafted higher than people understand. Jared Verse from Florida State, pass rusher, also a guy that people are very high on, also could go much higher than people realize. Brian Thomas Jr., the LSU receiver. I don't know how high he ends up going, but I do think that this is a player that teams have a high appreciation for. 17 touchdown catches last year to lead all of the FBS college football. Maybe not viewed by some teams as having like a dog alpha mentality. Like maybe it's all in the eye of the beholder. But you think about a guy like Darius Slayton. Is a guy who, if you meet him, he almost comes across as quiet and meek. But on the field, he's a competitor, and he's producing for you, and he's leading your team in receiving for the last 5 years if you're the Giants. And I think when you look at Brian Thomas's evaluation, how fast he is, how he ran the 40, what his stats look like, the fact that he and Malik Neighbors, turned that offense with Jaden Daniels into an absolute showstopper. Brian Thomas Jr., a guy to watch. I know he's a first rounder on everybody's board, but top half of first round is not crazy. Xavier Worthy, also a guy, set the 40 record at the NFL Combine from Texas, a speedster receiver who can separate, maybe in the realm of I know Tank Dell was not a first-round pick, but you think about what Tank Dell did for Houston's offense, a speedster down the field who can be a game breaker, who can stretch a defense, who can make a defense, keep them honest, let's say. Now, yes, Tank Dell was a third-rounder. Xavier Worthy, could he be a first-rounder? Well, in a year now where a lot of teams like the Giants are saying they have 15 first-round picks or first-round grades on players, could Xavier Worthy be a late-round selection in the first? Not out of the question talking to people in the NFL. And then something that you've probably heard already, but I think is worth mentioning, is that a ton of offensive tackles are going to go off the board tonight in the first round. And the ones that people respect the most, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, obviously. Oregon State, Talise Fuaga. Some people I trust on offensive linemen implicitly believe he is a top 10 guy, and that a team like the Chargers, if they traded back, right? Or would they take him anyway and not trading back? Or would a team take him in that realm that high, right? I'm not saying the Chargers, but necessarily at 5. But yeah, listen, I've talked to people who think he's worth that high of a pick. So, the Chargers offensive line market, Joe Alt, Talise Fuaga, Troy Fautanu from Washington, Olu Fashanu from Penn State, J.C. Latham from Alabama, and Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. All guys are expected to go in the first round. And then you have the next group of Jordan Morgan from Arizona. You have Graham Barton, the tackle who projects maybe as a center in the NFL, and Amarius Mims from Georgia. Are they going to be first rounders, early second rounders? They're going to maybe swing back and forth there. But a ton of teams who need offensive linemen and who are going to go offensive linemen tonight. So those are some league-wide insights as well. Two Step says McCarthy is very young and can be developed, and his hate reminds me a lot of the Bills with Josh Allen. There's also a note circulating, or a video circulating right now of J.J. McCarthy telling, I believe, Rich Eisen that talking about how much work the Giants have done on him.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I have somewhat of an idea. New York Giants, I've spent the most time with. They're a phenomenal staff. Love Coach Dable. Love, Mr. Shane. Love Coach Tierney, Coach Kafka, Chicago guy. Just being able to go in there, pretty much know most of the install, because Coach Dable came from Alabama and Coach Gaddis came to Michigan from Alabama. So it's similar formations, motions, plays, all that stuff. So being able to get that install in has been great. I met with them twice. It's been amazing.
Interesting, right? That's J.J. McCarthy. And we know, not only did I break the news of the Easter Sunday private workout in Ann Arbor that the Giants attended, but also you remember J.J. McCarthy saying at the NFL Combine that Brian Daboll and the Giants were having him call plays in the Giants' verbiage to essentially kind of see if the glove fits, so to speak. And it's almost like trying on clothes before you buy them. That was a really interesting targeted part of that pre-draft process, even early on. So like I said, I've been told by people that May is the guy, the North Carolina quarterback. But it wouldn't shock me if J.J. McCarthy was the Giants pick at all. That wouldn't shock me at all. My point is they're taking a quarterback above all. Mitch, or I'm sorry, I missed a comment here. Let me get back up there. British says, I feel like people are overlooking DJ's injury history. You can still believe in him while not wanting to continue with him due to injuries. Agree, British. Mick says, I can't see if the Giants want to move off Jones for injury concerns, toying with possibly taking Penix. I know it's tough to imagine. That's why I asked Joe Shane directly about him. He seemed to indicate it wasn't a major concern on his part. If you read between the lines, that was my takeaway, at least. Betch says, I made a live. What's up, Pat? Betch, thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate it. I know we do them late on Mondays and Thursdays. That tends to be the time that most people, or the largest group of people, are able to attend. I know some fans have said it's better like 7 p.m., but obviously we have lives and all kinds of stuff going on, and you're finishing your work, you have family obligations, you have all kinds of things. And so the best opportunity for me to spend time directly with you guys is when we do them. And I really appreciate everybody who carves out that time with me for those live chats and for this as well. Colin says, hey, Pat, love the show. You had an interview, I think, with Trevor Sikkema. That being said, Candyman gave an amazing trade the other day about Giants trading ties because they got Burns. That's right. No, thank you very much. Yeah, Trevor was a great guest. Candyman throws out fantastic and really well thought out scenarios. Look at us pushing 250 viewers consistently now here on the Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard, NFL Draft Day special. Thanks for being here. Remember, I'm the NFL and New York Giants columnist and beat writer for the New York Daily News, with the Giants every day, covering the league every day as well. Bring you inside insight from attending every practice, going inside the locker room, forming those relationships with players, coaches, and executives. Of course, we kicked off this calendar year with a bang, an enormous story about the inner workings of the Giants and what went wrong and the dysfunction, and reviewing all of the negative about last season, but also trying to portray what it could mean for the future. The Giants, of course, are trying to turn the page, face a lot of pressure now in this draft. It's a pivotal draft for this franchise. 100th season coming up, 100th anniversary coming up in 2025 as well of the 1925 founding. And what we're looking at here is it all is about Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, what the Giants do. How do they position themselves? This really is a win now draft more than a rebuild draft. Yes, the Giants are still building for tomorrow, but ultimately what they have to do is improve on the field and prove to ownership that they are headed in the right direction after a bad year. And all of that is framed by what? What are we doing at the most important position in the sport? And frankly, even if they, for some reason, don't go quarterback tonight, and I do believe they will go quarterback, but if they don't, it's still a major part of the story about, well, what does the quarterback situation look like now? If they're just relying on Daniel Jones coming off the injury, Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, can they actually win enough games this year to protect their jobs? This is all going into the pot of why it's so critical, seemingly, for them to go get a QB. Joe Shane has to prove his worth. Brian Daboll, especially, expected to call plays on offense. Also, with the Josh Allen history with both of them, can you bring in a quarterback, make that aggressive splash, and then develop a quarterback and kind of essentially, show the Giants ownership the reason why you were hired is the reason why you're going to help turn this franchise around. So there's a lot of variables, signs, actions, and reasons why quarterback makes sense for the Giants. But you're right, Colin. Candyman paints a ton of great scenarios for us. And just like earlier in our chat when we had Grim Silo driving the conversation with a trade scenario, we're now looking at people like Candyman and others continuing to drive the conversation. Colin says you got to give your fans a shout out using their ideas. Colin, what are you referring to? We give tons of shout outs on here. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not exactly following you though. Yeah, for sure. Always giving shout outs. No doubt about it. Betch says, are we getting the pick from the Eagles tampering with Barkley? I saw Adam Schefter followed up on that recently when it looked like it was heading towards a resolution this week. Schefter said that there would be no resolution from the NFL prior to the draft, I believe was his report. And so what that means is that any ramifications for the Falcons with Cousins or the Eagles with Barkley likely impact next year's draft. Colin says, love you, Pat. Keep up the good work. Let's go Big Blue. Scotty OG asks, are the Giants going to draft Penix at 6? Don't know, but I do think they take a quarterback, and I do think he's a dark horse. Let's see. Jose says, if Odunze or McCarthy is on the board at 6, who do they take? I think McCarthy, just in your scenario. Scotty says, Giants probably take Michael Penix Jr. over JJ. Hard to know. Possibly. Not out of the question. Is Daniel Jones being traded? Scorpio G-Men says. That's a possible scenario. The injury makes it difficult, but we've outlined in this chat why getting out of that contract is advantageous for the Giants. A2Z Me says, JJ McCarthy was a damn good hockey player as a teenager. That's all I need to know. Draft him. Hell yeah. I'm on board with that. British Gridiron Film says, watch JJ with Rich Eisen yesterday. Tell me you wouldn't run through a wall for the kid. Yep. And we just played and we just played our audio from Rich Eisen and JJ McCarthy there, and JJ talking about what the potential fit would look like and how much it would make sense if he was in New York based on how the offense, how his familiarity with the offense. Bill says, Drake sounds so much like Eli. Doesn't surprise me they've worked together. Tariq says, yo, Pat, the project logic would be better served after you pick at 6. Well, but if you believe the guy's your next franchise quarterback, you don't not take him at 6. You don't wait. You take him. Jerry says, thanks for your time, Pat. Good luck with your work stuff. Scorpio says, if it's football related, let's hear the call. Yeah, and Jerry says, Brandon Aiyuk calling Pat to let him know he's coming to the Giants. I wish. And yeah, sorry about not being on mute initially there, guys, when I was taking that call. But, definitely appreciate you guys waiting it out while I take these calls, work the phones, reading these texts. Promise you it's not being rude when I'm looking off camera, just doing the work. Let's see. Simeon says Shane and Daboll are going to die with their quarterback. Well, that's the thing, Simeon, is when your job is on the line and when the pressure starts to build, you want to go out your way, right? And now Joe Shane and Brian Daboll have no designs on going out. They want to win. They want to turn this around. They want this to be a long-term solution where they're running the show. And obviously the Giants want that sustainability as well. But, you talk to coaches, general managers, personnel people, and, around the league when they lose jobs. And the worst thing you can do in the view of a lot of people who have lost jobs is do something someone else's way. Let's say the owner forces you to do something that you didn't want to do, or that you listen to the general manager, even though the head coach wanted to do something else, or the GM listened to the coach when he wanted to pick a different player. The worst thing is to lose a job and fail, and then on the back end say, I wish I'd done it my way. That's the worst thing that all these coaches and GMs and executives and people talk about after they're gone from jobs. And so because of that, the most important thing, if you're Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, if you really do have reservations about Daniel Jones and you don't believe in him, as we believe is the case, then you don't go down with the ship with the guy captaining it that ultimately you don't want to be the face of your offense and your franchise, and you don't think can elevate your offense and raise that ceiling. And so that's where we are. That's where we are. All right, let's see. Mike says, is May comparable to Josh Allen in that he is very rough but has a potentially high ceiling, but not as high as Allen? Carolina did not run a sophisticated offense nor have a rep for developing QBs. Yeah, the scheme, not very good last year. Obviously, ACC player of the year as a freshman or in his first year. And, looked a little bit better there with some better players around him and a better scheme. Looked a lot better, obviously. Yes, he's super young. He's only 21 years old. There is a view of that potential upside. Evaluators I trust don't see Josh Allen. They see like a more limited version of Josh Allen, but that doesn't mean he's limited. What that means is is he as good of a runner as Josh Allen, even though he's a good runner, right? Is he as good of does he have a great arm? Yes. Does he have Josh Allen's arm, right? So I almost think it's unfair to bring up Josh Allen and expect him to be that, because that is such an elite talent and player. And it's also, it makes you wonder, how much was Brian Daboll responsible for Josh Allen being great? That's a question we're waiting to answer as well when the Giants ultimately draft a quarterback of their own and start developing him. But I think what interested me was that Drake May compared himself to Josh Allen when I spoke to him on the phone. I didn't say Josh Allen's name. He did, right? He said that he felt like they have similar skill sets. I will say, I'm sure you've seen it by now. If you haven't seen Drake running to his left in the red zone and using his left hand to flip that touchdown pass, man, if you want to get excited about a player, that's the type of play you watch. Fashu says either JJ or May is Daniel Jones 2.0. But if the Giants think that they're better than that and they think they're the next franchise QB, then you take a chance. British says, imagine walking out of the weekend with a QB and Aiyuk. Let's go. Fasho says Giants are going to trade for Higgins. Tariq said the Giants are going to walk in the same trap door that got us Daniel Jones. Hunter says he's on the phone. Pat's on the phone talking about trading 6 and Tommy DeVito for 3. Yep, that's exactly what I was doing. Let's see. Gloom says Pat talking directly to Joe Shane about who he should draft right now. Yeah, you think he'd listen to me? What do you think? Navis says there's no trading Daniel Jones. Nobody would take him, and you're increase his cap hit this year. Yeah, no, trade is not likely given the circumstances, the finances, and the injury. But I'm saying, like, ultimately, that would be a great, like if he was healthy, that would be a great thing for the Giants to explore. I would personally think they would like to, if that was the case. And like I outlined in my story and at the start and the middle of this call and this Talkin Ball live NFL draft special, there are financial incentives for the Giants not even to play Daniel Jones down on their team this year for injury guarantees. Danny makes a fair point. Dan Jones has always – I thought you were saying he's been on his butt. That's why I clicked on it. Oh, man. So you don't think he's been good. Fasho says Denver would take Daniel Jones. Well, them trading for Zach Wilson showed me that they didn't have any other avenues to go in. Though you got to still watch Sean Payton trying to take a quarterback for sure. Let's see. British says, I don't expect May or JJ to start in 2024. Both need a love Mahomes season. DJ or more likely Locke play a season opener with rookie being called upon if the season is over. Exactly, British. Exactly. The Green Bay Packers model of things is what the Giants ultimately would like to do. That's what they would like to do. Let's see. Fasho wants to trade Daniel Jones, draft Michael Penix. Replacing Daniel Jones for a rookie contract. Daniel Jones is still a win, says British. Let's see. Bill says Pat needs a play sheet to cover his mouth with when he's on the phone, one that can be blown up on TV. Yeah, I like that. British says the same thing. Yeah, it's definitely Omaha, like as Hunter just said. Omaha. Right, where's the Ben McAdoo Denny's menu? That's a really good call. I should get that going. Draft board cheat sheet. Let's see. Jerry said we're going to feel terrible if Pat's getting fired right now. Hey, listen, if that call was me getting fired, Jerry, then we would still have this community, and I would not be intimidated by my ability to get that next job and to continue to bring you guys inside information on the NFL and on the Giants. Crunch Bunch says, I enter the live stream and see Pat on his phone. Love it. Let's go, Crunch Bunch. Jerry says, is this the face of a man acting like he was just told Brandon Aiyuk is coming to the Giants? Haven't been told that yet. British says he's a successful YouTuber now. Well, we'll see. We're building, and you guys are building it. It's not me. It's you. Jay Stewart saying he's ordering pizza. Jay Stewart, no faith in my insider ability. Jerry said he was beatboxing. Let's see. Derek Nelson said that Pat was on the phone with Pretty Ricky. Yeah, I'm feeding him all the scoops. Hunter says I could make a phone call with 194 people watching. I'd be laughing too hard. Jerry says this is the most interested I've been in YouTube in weeks. Nas says I was talking to LeBron. Steven says Jones would have to agree to void the rest of his contract. Then the Giants would have to pay most of his salary for this year, but someone would have to want to trade for him to make it worth it. Yep, all that's true. Yep. Davey says, I'm out of here. The Giants are not taking a quarterback. Wow. Bill Brightly says, I just arrived. This better be good. And that was about an hour ago. I hope I satisfied you, your appetite for NFL information, Bill. Let's see. Davey says, we're not taking Drake May or JJ McCarthy. We're going wide receivers. So maybe I should take Pat Leonard's job. Pat Leonard is clickbait. I will say, Davey, I've never really been called that. Not by anybody who actually reads what I write and follows what I report. But you're entitled to your opinion, Davey. Just keep it friendly. It doesn't have to be what we agree with, but keep it friendly, all right? Because that's one thing I love about this community compared to what's going on X. Really, like, I think it's a very toxic environment. And a lot of people, frankly, who are unaccountable about how they challenge you personally, right? Because they're hiding behind some anonymous account, whatever. What I like about this is I'm on screen talking directly to you guys. And what I found is 98% to 99% of the people on here are respectful. And even if we disagree, even if it gets heated as far as the disagreement and you guys are fired up and totally disagree with what I'm saying, it's always respectful. So keep it respectful, Davey, please. All right, let's see. Is that D Kit I see in the chat? Let's see. Let's get down here. Oh, Jay Jan said, does JJ equal DJ? Thanks, Pat. Go G-Men. You know what, Jay Jan? That's a good question. I think he's developmental. So what he's going to be in a year, JJ McCarthy, in my opinion, is not what he is now. I think that's very true. Talk to enough evaluators who believe, this is a guy who's going to be developing. But the Giants wouldn't be drafting a guy necessarily that you'd be plugging in and playing. You'd be drafting a guy to try to develop with somebody as a stopgap. So Daniel Jones, I think, was pretty ready early, obviously, to take over for Eli Manning there and scored a lot of points as a rookie, even though he turned the ball over as well in that Pat Shurmur offense. I think if you're drafting J.J. McCarthy, you're working him in when he's ready, but you're looking at him initially, at least from my vantage point, more as a guy who you're grooming to take over when he proves. Novice says, are they celebrating 100 years this season or next? So this season is the 100th season for the Giants. This is their 100th football season, so that's something they'll celebrate. But then obviously the 1925, 2025, that's the centennial anniversary. So I think it's a celebration that's going to start this fall or this year and continue. There it is. It's D Kit. Pat, how great is this? Time for you to break something. Get on it. I'm trying, D Kit. I'm trying. Let's see. All right, let's get back up. Great examples from some of our loyal listeners and followers and viewers there and subscribers. If you want a question or comment addressed early in this chat or quickly, and I haven't gotten to it quickly enough, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker. So that's money that you buy and your comment gets highlighted. It alerts me that you've done it, and it goes right to the top of the queue. I address it as soon as I see it. And it's a way for you to support the channel and for me to get to your question in a timely fashion, because I do try to go through the full queue. And right now, obviously there's a lot to get through. I know I'm behind from the timestamp purposes, but I'm trying to mow through. So if you feel like I'm not getting to it in a timely fashion or you have to get out of here, those are things that you can do. If you're not going to purchase a super chat or super sticker, don't worry about it. Just hit the like button. That's a great way to help generate engagement. YouTube pushes it, shows Giants and NFL fans out there that we are doing this. It's a great way to support the channel as well. And please subscribe, because we're growing. We're over 2,000. We're over 2,000 subscribers now. Can't thank you guys enough. We went over 1,000 earlier in this calendar year, not long ago though. It has been a meteoric rise from 1,000 to 2,000 in subscriber level. And yes, I'm working hard at it. I'm trying to bring you guys the best information and content that I can, but you guys are the reason that that's happening. Your appreciation and your support. So I appreciate you. All right. Jerry says Peter Schrager has the Giants taking JJ at 6 in his latest mock. It's possible. Jay Stewart says, Pat, you need to break some news on your channel. If I have it, I will. Let's see. Danny says, be fair, Giants have always been overly fair to Daniel Jones. No other team was drafting him 6 overall, and no other team was re-signing him to a $90 million guaranteed contract. He can kick rocks now. It's true that the Giants don't owe him anything right now. Michael agrees with Davey that the Giants, that he doesn't want to get his hopes up and just accept the Giants are going to take a great player at 6 and then see how the draft develops. Let's see. Fasho says stay away from mediocre quarterbacks. Michael thinks the Vikings want JJ. Seraph says, I really like JJ for the Giants. His age and mobility has me sold. So do you guys also see, just as we're sitting here talking, how different from person to person, even amongst yourselves, the opinions are on the specific quarterbacks, on the fits for the Giants, on where they should be taken? So NFL GMs and coaches and scouts, like they're the same way. They're on the inside of this and they're doing all this research and they're taking all these visits and interviews and they're scouting these guys. And so they have more information, but in a similar way, depending on who you talk to, they feel differently, person to person. All right, let's see. John Kirk says, how can the Giants risk letting Jones play this year, given the injury clause and the fact that they will be cutting him after this year? John, thank you so much for the super chat and those $5. Really appreciate that support. Really, I know I might just say thank you and get on with answering your questions, guys, when you do that. But trust me, like I would sit here for 10 minutes and talk about how grateful I am that you think enough of what I'm doing and that you're spending your time and your money like that. I really don't take it for granted at all. Just incentivizes me to bring more information to you. So, John, your question answers itself. $23 million of that $30 million salary in 2025 is guaranteed for injury for Daniel Jones. So if you play him this year and he gets hurt in a game, or if he gets hurt in a practice, or if he even just gets hurt lifting weights in their facility on the premises, those are all things that can kick in that injury guarantee for 2025. So then if he's on the roster on the 5th day of the league year in 2025, even if he's not hurt, that guarantees a minimum of $12 million for that season on his salary. And then if he gets hurt, the other 11 is still guaranteed for injury. So this is how this is the reason why, John, and I outlined in the story today, could the Giants legitimately be moving on from Daniel Jones in some way sooner rather than later, or avoiding playing him at all because of that reason? That is a very real concern for a Giants team if they are, as we believe they are, looking to move on from Daniel Jones and from a contract that they view as a mistake. Then those are things that they're not going to try themselves too, right? All right, let's see what the rest of you are saying. Thank you so much for that super sticker. Really appreciate that. D-Kit checks in again, supporting the channel. D-Kit, appreciate you. If you can't trust the GM, coach, quarterback choice, they shouldn't be here. But if they don't take one, they shouldn't be here. Is that hypocritical? Really good call, D-Kit. Let me take a sip here. All right. So I think, no, listen, if they don't take one, it's going to be because they either couldn't get to me. It's going to be because they weren't able to get to their guy. And then it's going to be a decision consciously that they ended up making not to take one of the other ones at 6, right? So it'll be a conscious decision. And they'll have to live with that, and they'll have to have a really good season this year to prove that they deserve to still be here. Now, I agree with your first part, though. I agree with that first comment. If you're the owner and, if you're John Mara and Steve Tisch, you paid Daniel Jones last year, and Joe Shane's beholden to that, no question about it, as far as being accountable for the decision, even if ownership was involved. You were still the general manager. You were still, we still read Albert Breer's story about the Giants grinding it out in the tight end room, and Joe Shane and Daniel Jones's agent and John Mara on the phone with Daniel Jones. So you're still a part of all that. But yes, like if you're ownership, you hire people to make these decisions. That's what you're paying them for. Richard says, what would you do as Giants GM? Richard, I would take a quarterback. My personal opinion is that this regime is under more pressure than people understand. Definitely the head coach, maybe the GM, depending on how bad this season goes. I don't know how that's going to work out. But if I were Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, I would be going to the wall for my guy. That's what I would be doing. If you're not taking a quarterback, I see just as much argument for an offensive lineman as for a wide receiver. But I've talked to enough people in the NFL, who believe essentially that a stud wide receiver really opens things up. So, even if you don't solidify the offensive line perfectly, as long as the quarterback is capable and can push the ball down the field. The problem is you don't have the quarterback who pushes the ball down the field in an efficient, consistent way. So again, we're back to square one. It just keeps coming back to the quarterback, Rich. Bill says, thanks for the show, Pat. Been sitting draft season out this year as I got too invested last year. I agree. What happens for me in 2024. Bill, I understand. And that's why, again, we'll see what happens. But I think, Bill, to manage these last few hours before we get to the draft, take a breath and don't get involved in the minutia. That's why I almost think it's therapeutic to just look at this like everything points to a quarterback. It has all along. Who knows what's going to transpire? But that's what the Giants have shown us. We have to trust our eyes and ears and the reporters that we trust who have been telling us this. So that hopefully that gets you to draft time. All right. And again, listen, I don't have to predict a pick. In fact, you can be dangerous to predict a pick. And then if it doesn't come to fruition, they take a wide receiver instead of a quarterback, then everybody says, oh, you said quarterback, Pat was wrong and this and that. You guys have to understand though, like there's so much misinformation at this time of year. And also, regardless of what you hear, what happens on the clock, if that's unexpected, if teams ahead of the Giants pick players that we didn't expect, those kind of things, there's so many different, variables that can change. So if they don't go QB, promise you that all the signs are pointing towards them trying to do it. And as you guys hear, like, I don't really have to validate this, but they're working the phones trying to move up. Like that's what's happening. Right. We're continuing to work the phones, as Sal Powell said, but it's going to be when they're on the clock. Let's see. All right, let's try to get through this queue here because I want to make sure everybody is heard. Scott says, I think the Chargers are going to be the team to make the trade. Yeah, and ultimately that could be the scenario. And like I said, a personnel executive was telling me earlier, he thinks it's going to be 3 QBs in the top 3, no trade, Arizona wide receiver, and that the Chargers would be the trade team for the Giants to go up and protect their turf and get their guy. So that is possible. Anton says, real interactive show this. Yeah, I really enjoy this, Anton. And I know everyone's pressuring me right now to try to break news for you here. And listen, I'm working the phones. I'm checking the text. I'm sending messages, looking at even the email, right? Checking it in. You got messages coming in from all different angles and trying to bring you guys live updates. If I have something, I will. If I don't, I won't. This is one thing I will not do, is force the issue just to have something. What I'm going to do is bring you something when I have it and I know it's right. That's what I'm going to do. And if I don't break news on this today, on this live chat today, you can keep following my X account, P Leonard NYDN, and all my social media, Instagram, PL on NFL, same on YouTube, same on TikTok. Tariq says, I'm going to laugh if the Giants draft a QB and he ends up being a bust. Yeah, I mean, but you got to take a chance if you believe, Tariq. Tariq, you're correct. You don't just draft a quarterback just to draft a quarterback, regardless of what you think of him. Like, that's not what I'm saying. You draft the guy that you love. Simeon says, Jones, Dexter, and the number 6 pick to move up. You can't trade Dexter. Let's see. Fasho says, I honestly believe we should take Neighbors and hope for Sanders next year, Shedeur Sanders, or trade with the Vikings and get Brock or Rome at 11 and Penix at 23. Penix will not be available at 23. Zach says, I'm not big on going QB at 6, but if they feel we need one, we should get one. Can't let the DJ pick years ago scare us. Mike Egan says, I hope we go wide receiver at 6. We need someone who draws double coverage. Joey says, I would love to see a trade for DJ to the Broncos for Patrick Surtain. I do not understand why people think, I know it's been out there and floated around and reported. I don't understand why people think they would trade Patrick Surtain. He's a really good young corner who's made an all-pro team and 2 Pro Bowls. So I don't see why you would trade him. Michael says, no way Denver does that, even though they want to trade. That's a great DB, Surtain. There you go. Super Unknown, what's going on? Good to see you. I love all you guys when you're waiting for me on the phone. You're like, this better be good. Mike says, have you heard how steep the Patriots price tag is to trade up? I'm fairly sure May is the top priority. Would 6 next year's first and 1 to 2 future day 2 picks be enough, Pat? Keep killing it. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you. Here's what I would say. I don't know what the full package will look like, but I definitely think it will include next year's first, right? So if you're trading up to the Patriots, it's next year's first. Now the Cardinals, Chargers, that's probably a different scenario and maybe more palatable, especially if they love the guy who's there, say a JJ McCarthy or a Drake May, right? You're paying less to get the guy that people thought that you were going to maybe trade up to 3 to get. Mike says, what's up, Pat? Put your GM hat on. What point do you walk away from a trade up deal, Patriots or Vikings? I think, well, Mike, here's what I would say. I think, including next year's 1, then for me, it becomes like, okay, can I avoid giving up 47 as well while giving up that 1? Probably hard to do. But you're trying to find a way, if you're giving up that premium asset next year, to protect that 2. That just might not be feasible, though, because when you think about it, the Jets traded the 3 2s up to from 6 to 3 several years ago for Sam Darnold, and the Giants don't have those 3 2s. So can you trade next year's 1 and 2 and protect this year's 2 so that you can use number 47 on a player who helps you now? Those are the things you're thinking about if you're Joe Schoen when it comes to those assets. I'm not saying they would be able to do that, but I'm saying you're definitely trying to find a way to protect how you build this team in the short term as well. I also think this is something I said earlier on the chat, but guys, I do think that the Giants are in a great position holding number 6 compared to the Vikings at 11, even though the Vikings have 23. Now, obviously, that's in the eye of the beholder and what the team that's trading back views as most valuable to them. But I believe that the Giants, teams like the elite players at the top of this class, teams don't want to trade out of that group if they're already in it. So trading back to 6, if you're at 3, 4, or 5, is much more palatable than trading back to 11, even though these teams need more assets for their roster. Funny enough, the Washington Commanders are actually a team who profiles as one that, given their roster, a trade back to get a king's ransom. If you're Washington, I know they still want to draft a quarterback, but that's a team that getting a king's ransom in a trade seems palatable, right? Now, how far would you want to trade back? Again, not that far. And no one truly expects the Giants and Commanders to be the deal because they're in division. But if the Commanders get a king's ransom, that would be a team. Now, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to take a quarterback. It's probably Jaden Daniels at number 2. But they need a quarterback and so much more. Now, the Giants do as well, right? But just owning that number 2 pick, like if someone was going to pay what you demanded at 2 to come up, Washington really does feel like a team that could really use a huge haul. But of course, they had Marcus Mariota and no one else in their roster. British says, I would give up next year's first for Aiyuk if it gets us playoff football next year as a GM. I think the GM and coach would sign up for that too. Zach Attack says, I had a feeling that contract was Mara's doing. He better keep his butt out of football decisions from now on. Michael says they should have signed Saquon and gotten out of Jones on that 1-year deal on the tag. Well, Michael, here's the thing. They intended to do that, and then they did the opposite. How do you intend to sign Saquon to a multi-year deal and tag Daniel, and then when you can't get the deal done, you flip and do the opposite? It's the complete opposite scenario. It's terrible business. Jerry says the Patriots aren't interested in moving down. If the Giants are going to trade up, they are going to move up. It's going to have to be an offer none of us will be happy with. Possibly. Jonathan said McCarthy to the Giants at 5, confirmed. Possible. Jay Fed says, of course, it was John Mara's idea to pay Jones. OG says, I pray they draft the right quarterback. If they draft one tonight, I'm tired of fighting with my fellow Giants fans about Daniel Jones. I said 3 years ago, Daniel Jones is trash to QB, and Giants fans were mad. Yeah, it's not the same thing, but it almost reminds you of like the Bears fans who, even after the trade of Justin Fields, are still kind of fighting this idea that like that the Bears shouldn't have abandoned him and they should have just continued to build around him, and he needed more around him. It's very, very interesting, right? Like there's always going to be a semblance of the fan base that doesn't want the change, but maybe the change is the best thing. Fulon says he thinks it's McCarthy. Miz, what's going on? Miz says, let's go, Drake May. Jerry says, Matt Smith reports the Cardinals have told Marvin Harrison Jr. he is the pick at 4. He is the most likely pick at 4. That's true. I can tell you that too. Have said that already. But thank you for bringing that here, Jerry. Super Unknown says, will you be on this evening after the draft, and will you be live during the draft? I won't be live during the draft because at least this year, this is just growing to a great level here this year, this podcast and these lives. And for this year anyway, I don't have a setup arranged where I'm going to be in an area where it's just me. I'm going to be in that media room with a lot of other people. So doing a live right there with everyone's not conducive to that. And I could do it somewhere else, stay home and do it. But then I'm not bringing you guys that inside access from the building. I'd be working the phones and doing all that, but I wouldn't be sitting there in the Giants building talking to Joe Shane and Brian Daboll after the pick and plugging in that regard. So I felt like the most valuable way to do it is we do this live chat to prime the pump for the draft. You can follow me on social media during it. And then after the draft, try to do something live, even if it's relatively quick, here on the YouTube channel after the draft tonight. Now, if it is so late that it makes no sense to do that late, then what we'll do is just do something early in the morning. And I'll post some content, and then we'll do something early in the morning, first thing in the morning, and it's something that's reasonable. But stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated on that. We have a $10 super chat rolling in here from my guy D Kit. D Kit says, you're right, Pat. Number 23 sounds good because it's in the first, but the Texans traded back from that pick to get more assets because Caserio didn't see much difference in the quality of player after the top 15. Right. And what did Nick Caserio do as well? He got a pick. He got picks moving back, and then he used one of his picks that he had in those mid rounds, the second round, I think, on Steph Diggs, right, to bring in a real established player rather than using that pick on a player. That's accurate, right? I think it's possible that Minnesota extra first is not viewed by the teams that they're trying to trade with as an extra first. Maybe it's more viewed by people or by teams that they're offering it to as a high second, right? So D-Kit, thank you. Great point. And thank you so much for the support here in this chat. And always, I really appreciate you. All right, let's get back into the queue. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. I got to get back in here. All right. We were back at Miz. Let's see. D3C says Drake May, please. Rich says JJ McCarthy being able to perform in cold weather is underrated. Michael wanted to know if I was getting a second confirmation on the phone there. J Fed wants them to draft Neighbors. Jonathan says if the Giants could land McCarthy at 5 and trade for Aiyuk without giving up any first-round picks, that's a win. Hard to disagree there. Hard to disagree there. Let's see. Novice says if Mara and family want to run personnel, that's fine. They own the team. Just be all in or all out. Yep, right. Don't toe the line. Jackson says, Pat, will you tweet the pick before the people viewing on TV know the pick? Jackson, I will if I get it, right? So that's something you do during the draft. You're talking to sources in the league, and you're trying to make sure you have a read on things as early as possible, obviously. That's what we're in this business doing, trying to get the information out to you guys ASAP. And so you're always efforting to do that. There are years where I have the information before the pick comes out, and there are years where I have it kind of like at the same time as a lot of other people, right? So we'll see. But I will try as hard as I can to get that to you. And stay tuned on my social media. That's what I would say, especially on X, P Leonard NYDN. Bark26 says, I need Giants to get Drake May. Steven says, Italian guy talking quietly with mouth covered. How cliche. I am only part Italian, Steven. I am Italian, but I'm only part Italian. So you are stereotyping incorrectly, my friend. But yes, that is a part of my heritage for sure. Tariq says, didn't Eli Manning work with Daniel Jones? Right. Yeah, and he looked like him and sounded like him and reminded him of the Giants, and they drafted him 6th overall. Chad says, agree with the comment above. Mara owns the team. He can do what he wants, but don't pretend the GM is running things and let him take heat for bad decisions. That's cowardice. Let's see. Bill says DJ went to the Manning QB school, Chad. Right, exactly. Derek says Jaden Daniels is minus 1,000 to go 2 in the books. Conspiracy theory in me thinks league is telling teams to wait and make tonight a show. That's exactly what they're doing. Yep, that's true. Super Unknown says Neighbors, Fisk, or Haynes, Rattler, RB, PSU, tight end. I would not make that trade to the Patriots. Hank says, stop with the Neighbors pick. We need a quarterback right fast to actually throw to the wide receiver 1. This draft is deep in wide receivers. Learn football, please. All right, be nice, be nice. Downtown Movie says, trade back, draft Penix. Can't go too far back. Rich says, hey, Pat, great show. Could the Giants eat some of Daniel Jones' contract and trade him to get more of a return package? More likely, it's a post-June 1 cut. So if you cut Daniel Jones outright and you make him not, let me just flick this light off. It's flickering. We've gone so long here on the Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard draft show that my light here that kind of shines bright is running out of battery. So that's how strong we've been going here. So, Rich, here's what it looks like. If you cut Daniel Jones outright after the draft and you make him a pre-June cut, that's a $69 million dead cap hit this year, then 22 and 25 and 11 in 2026. But if you cut Daniel Jones as a post-June 1 cut, so you could cut him and then you just get the cap savings on June 2nd. That reduces this year's dead cap hit from 69 to 47, and then it's 11 and 11 the next 2 years. So that's the most likely scenario if they truly intend to move on. Now, if you trade him, this is all courtesy of overthecap.com, by the way. They run a great site. If you trade him, it's a $33 million dead cap hit this year. And if you trade him and make him a post-June cut, now you're talking 11, 11, 11 all 3 years, and that's the best scenario. Of course, a trade is difficult given the money that the team may be taking on. You'd have to be taking on Jones's money or part of Daniel Jones's money to make it happen as well. I doubt the team would be taking on that salary, would be interested in that. Let's see. All right, Tariq says, I like Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis over Drake and JJ. FSU was undefeated before the conference championship. Okay. 1 sec, excuse me. Jordan Travis, Tariq, interestingly, Emery Hunt, who came on our Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, that's up on the YouTube page as well. He said that he would wait and take Jordan Travis at value because he loves that player as well, coming off the injury. OG says Arizona, Chicago, LA, Detroit all got rid of their quarterbacks after they flamed out, but the Giants want to keep Daniel Jones. Shaking my head. OG, exactly. Undefined says, how did I miss this was on? Oh, sorry, Undefined. Yeah, I tried to promote it. I promoted it this morning. I mainly talked about it on the lives when we were doing them here. I didn't have like a full week long run up to telling everybody that it was coming. So no problem. You can rewind and watch it when this, on the YouTube page and kind of help you hopefully prime up for the NFL draft in the hours leading up to it. Jacob says, I believe this is going to be the most active draft night in a while. Do you agree? I think that's possible. I think it's possible. Let's see. I think they will have to go wide receiver, even though I wish they could get a quarterback, says Astro Doc. May or JJ, whoever Dable thinks is the guy. Too bad Mara will not buy in despite what he said. Prediction, Odunze round 1. Joey B says, I want Cooper BB. Brian Baldy said that he loves Cooper Beebe as a round 2 pick, the guard from Kansas State. That is a guy who Baldy also said he thinks that the Eagles would take in the second round. They have multiple second round picks. Yeah, Michael, he has the injury, Jordan Travis, but should be good to go eventually. Maybe you look at him kind of like a Hendon Hooker scenario. Of like taking him at value as a guy who you're hoping down the road turns into something. British says 21 offensive players today. It is going to be offensive heavy in the first round. Shane offered DJ a contract, good for both parties, David said. Dead cap on DJ drops a lot after this year. If you were going to sign him to a big deal, it was the best way for them to sign a big deal and get out of it after 2 years if they could. Jerry said of my JJ McCarthy comment, unlike OJ, sounds like that glove fits. There you go. Achilles says, what a dummy saying in an interview, if that's indeed true regarding JJ, driving the price up so we can't get him. Help if everyone know we are taking him. British says JJ personality, more of a leader than DJ. They do like his leadership, people do. If Patriots were drafting Drake May and that was their guy, they wouldn't be entertaining any offers, says Jose Rosario. Yeah, there's something to that. It's interesting. Kelly says, I think we should draft a top wide receiver and take Jordan Travis later, have him sit the first half to recover and learn as much as possible. Richard said Patriots are putting up smoke screens. A. West says this could be another Will Levis situation, possibly. You have to be wary of that if you're the Giants and you're any of these teams in the quarterback market. The hype is really something that drives up the price and could, if you're listening to it and you're not making your own decisions and you have rabbit ears, could really in the end impact what you're thinking and at least put pressure on you to feel like you have to maybe, work harder and make a more expensive trade up to get your guy when it might not be the case, right? So you do have to be wary. Scott said, Pat, listening while at work, can't wait until 8 tonight to see who our New York Giants draft. It's probably going to happen closer to, well, if they trade up, it could happen 8:30-ish, 8:40-ish. If they don't, it could happen 9 o'clock-ish, a little after that. Achilles loves Jordan Travis. All right. Newton says, with how crazy the league is going for these 2024 tackles, do you think O-line pool in the draft will be depleted by the Giants' later picks? No, actually, Newton, after we're off here, you can check out on the New York Daily News website. Maybe a week or a week and a half ago, I ran a 2-part series on the Giants' offensive line, where it stands and what they can do in this draft. And I talked to several experts who felt like there were ample opportunities, especially in the third round area for the Giants, even in the second round, possibly to make some waves and bring in guys, whether it's to help now and also develop. So take a look at that. Connor says, appreciate the streams, Pat. You got it, Connor. Draft better. You're a draft better. Okay, a draft better here. Been watching all the streams. Thanks for the info. You got it, Connor. Richard says, Penix for Rookie of the Year. Alexander says, JJ also talked about how he wanted to do more, but felt it was most important. Bought into the system and whatever it took to win. He was a 5-star for a reason. Hank says no other teams think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. Yeah, it was very interesting to see throughout his Giants career. You see guys like Baker Mayfield and the Niners defensive players talk trash about his game. You just don't see that a lot. British says Rams are trying to get in the top 10. Wouldn't surprise me. Les Snead is a menace, and they could be drafting a quarterback. Matthew Stafford's still there, but that succession plan, time to create it, right? And Sean McVay, let's go. Nick says, I've seen May comp to Herbert, not Allen. Justin says, if we got May, what are the odds in 5 years we say he was worth trading 6, 47, and 25 first for, but not worth 3 firsts? Yeah, hard to say, Justin. And that's why it has to be in the eye of the beholder. Let's see. Jose does say, which is accurate, you can't go into the season with the same wide receivers and expect change. That's why them being on the trade market isn't a crazy idea. Be interesting to see if a Brandon Aiyuk type deal comes to fruition. D Kid says, Pat, the time is nearing. I'm feeling QB one way or another. Seems to me the Giants are convinced. New era begins tonight. I agree, D Kid. I agree. Where are my entertainers says the reduction of football teams to their QB is a plague. Giants should take Neighbors, Harrison Jr., or Mims Latham. Fair viewpoint. Where are my entertainers? Although if you don't have a good QB, you don't have much. But the Giants roster, and especially their offensive and receiver depth chart, definitely screams what you're talking about. Jerry says, you know what? I'm subscribing. I followed you for years on Twitter, Pat, but I no longer have an account. Thank you, Jerry. Really appreciate you. And I am, if you want to, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on PL on NFL. But this is where I've been putting a lot of time and energy and information into. And I really appreciate you saying you're subscribing. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard page on YouTube. Let's see. Steven accurately says that Daniel Jones wasn't considered top 10 in his draft. Let's see. Okay. Kit says, Jones got his money somehow. Time to turn the page from this awful past few years. Saquon wasted. Fan base will be energized by a new QB1. Going wide receiver would be a colossal mistake. Where my entertainers give Zach Wilson and Jones comps for JJ and May. We'll see. I mean, we're not the experts on whether they're going to turn into something impressive or franchise changing. But I do believe if an organization believes a guy's going to be franchise changing, that you have to take the swing. LJ says, Pat, appreciate the fearlessness in your reporting. The fans need that. Thank you, LJ. I really appreciate that. Tried my best to deliver the truth and my version of not my version of the truth, but my interpretation and honest opinion, even if it's one that I know could be unpopular, could be something that's going to make somebody upset, whatever it is. But if it's reliable information and it's grounded in my observations and insight and information and sources, then I think it's something that deserves to be said and that the fan base deserves to hear and needs to hear. And it creates a full and accurate picture of what your team in the league looks like. Tariq says, I will be pissed if the Giants pick a fake QB with 6. British says, how aligned do you think the war room is? Will you have an owner telling a GM to make a splash? The Giants have had issues in the past of ownership being involved and in personnel where things didn't go the way that they wanted to necessarily. But also ownership has overseen 4 Super Bowls. Also, it's actually interesting. A lot of the meddling conversations this year are happening with teams like the Patriots and the Commanders at 2 and 3. So you have the personnel people in those buildings, Adam Peters, Elliott Wolf, and then the Kraft, Josh Harris, a new owner in Harris, owners in the Crafts who without Belichick can finally, kind of control everything there. Elliott Wolf doesn't even have a GM title. And as I said earlier, the Crafts were the ones who selected Mac Jones. So even when Belichick was there, they were forcing picks. So that does happen in the NFL, and it's something to keep an eye out for, not just with the Giants, but throughout the top 10 and throughout the draft. Could the Giants just send Denny home for the year so he doesn't get hurt in practice? You don't see that a lot, but it would be, it's conceivable. But presumably they would find a place for him, whether it was cutting him so he could land somewhere else or whatever the case may be, if that happened. Scott says, hey, Pat, I watch a lot of college football, and my personal opinion is J.J. McCarthy over May. Thank you, Scott, for that input. Not all of us here watch as much college football as you, and we appreciate you bringing that to us. British says, Vontae Mack no matter what. Tariq brings up a reasonable point. The Giants can't get a quarterback later. Rodgers, Brady, Jackson, Purdy. You can. You can't count on it, though, right? But you can. And this is a deep quarterback draft. So that could be the route they go if they get shut out of their quarterbacks at the top of the draft. They're definitely drafting a quarterback in this draft. I think they're drafting one tonight. D-Kit kind of has a similar take to me. Tariq, no. If they can't get a franchise QB, they should not waste a pick on a backup QB. They have many other needs. And that's what Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus said on our podcast. You can watch that episode as well, preparing for the draft. Let's see. Scott says, hey, Pat, I want okay, yeah, I saw that. D-Kit says to Bill, who said he's been tuning out of the draft season, sitting out because he got too invested last year, suck it up. We're all teaming up to handle this draft together. Tariq, be nice, be nice. Bill says, working on a D-Kit. A buddy did a mock for me yesterday as I wasn't dipping my toe into it this year. David said, I agree, but if Shane believes he can improve the QB situation, he has to. Quarterback is the most important position on the team, and I doubt Giants will have a number 6 overall first-round pick again soon. Well, you hope they don't. Penix Jr. makes more sense at 6, he thinks, than JJ and Drake. Brian says Penix will be the best pro. 647 next year's first and second. Oh boy, that's expensive. Yeah. J Rock says, what about this as far out trade? If you think Joe Alt is a premium left tackle, trade Andrew Thomas to the Chargers, draft the QB who is there, and grab Joe Alt with ours. Oh, interesting. So, turning your team super young. I don't think trading Andrew Thomas or Dexter Lawrence or any of the, any of the few kind of top tier players on your roster, I don't think is the answer. But that's an interesting kind of hypothetical. Let's see. Hunter says making a deal with Washington for Washington is extra motivation to beat us, more incentive. Yeah, it's unlikely because it's in division. I was just saying that Washington makes sense as a team to possibly trade out, you would think, hypothetically, when you look at their roster and their positioning. Candyman says, I'm thinking the Patriots are cool on May, plan on drafting JJ, but trying to fleece the Giants to get up to 3 and then get JJ at 6 anyway. Chance JJ isn't there at 6, but that would be a score for them. Reasonable, yep. And like we said earlier, maybe they have to trade back up to protect other teams, from taking JJ over them. Maybe they have to go back up to the Cardinals. Bill says the tag for Saquon versus DJ were like $20 million different, though. If we took the 5th year on DJ, though, Achilles says, I think it's unfair to see GM and coach are at risk to lose their jobs. Going in right direction. They made the playoffs last year, 2 years ago, and Daboll won coach of the year first season. Yeah, last year was a disaster, though. Achilles says prior 3 coaches were abysmal. I didn't think Judge was. I thought he was hampered by Dave Gettleman, and then obviously he wasn't he wasn't equipped to run the offense himself when he had to bail on Jason Garrett, that's for sure. Jerry says Diana Rossini is reporting the Rams are trying to get into the top 10. They haven't had a first-round pick since 2016. Probably for a quarterback, you would think, right? As a succession plan to Matthew Stafford, but we'll see. Bill says, thanks for the words of wisdom, Pat. Hunter says, be the first guy to get the pick for the Giants, please, out there on social media. I will try. Alzo, hello from Belgrade, Serbia, a regular. Let's go Big Blue. Alzo, thanks for being here. Zach says, as a Giants fan, not from New York, what makes the New York media so scary compared to other places? I don't think it is, Zach. I think that's overblown. I think the Philadelphia media, and maybe even in a way the New England media at times, are more harsh, like bubbles of coverage and pressure. Like I actually think a lot of people in the New York media are not as difficult, harsh as people would think. It is a competitive market, but to me, there is a vacuum of people doing when one of our loyal viewers said earlier that he appreciated my fearlessness in my reporting. I don't think, New York brings it the way that people think and the way that the reputation is. Like, I think that there's a lot of tough markets and there's tougher markets. Like I said, I think Philly's a tougher media market, but New York's does get blown up and kind of aggregated quicker. And it is that national spotlight. So if someone gets criticized, like if a player or coach gets criticized in New York, everybody sees it and hears it. But nowadays, though, all of these markets, because of social media and the reach of how we are all connected, anybody can really be in a position where you're feeling the heat like you might in a New York market. I personally, Zach, don't think it's as harsh. I think if you're feeling it, I think if it's harsh to somebody, it's because you're interpreting it that way. Or maybe you're not a big city, you're not from a big city, you've never worked in a big city. So you react a different way to it. But I personally don't feel like it's as harsh as the reputation is. For show KB says, have you seen the Neighbors live stream of Caleb Williams about where he can be drafted? Yeah, my interpretation of that, just watching it, is it almost sounded like Caleb thought Neighbors was going to the Chargers. But who knows? I don't know. Is it true Broncos are willing to include Surtain in next year's first and the 12th for number 6? I don't know. Trading Surtain. But I do think Sean Payton wants a quarterback. Tariq says now Eli is working with is working with Drake May. What an omen. Michael says, I see what you mean, Candyman, but Chargers are a wrench, and they are likely to make a trade, as Pat says. Giants can't get JJ by waiting at 6. Yeah, I think it's still a trade to 5 to get your guy, probably. Let's see. D-Kit says, geez, Pat, at this rate, this podcast is going to seriously explode, especially if you keep it going in season. Don't big time us when it does, because this is really top quality stuff. Expect copycats. D-Kid, I appreciate you saying that, man. I'm not a big timer. If this got bigger, that would be like just having more resources at my disposal to handle the wealth of, quotes and comments and information from all you guys and questions and opinions to filter through it to make sure I'm getting to it all. More eyeballs and hands involved in kind of helping the process along. But, I hope it keeps getting bigger, and I intend for everybody to be on this ride and journey with me. I mean, you guys are what's making it go, right? And D-Kit, you've been a huge part of it lately, especially, and all the loyal followers and listeners. You guys are all making this go, and I really do appreciate it. And I thank you for saying that, D-Kit. Really nice of you. Let's see. Achilles says, do you think JJ slipped up giving up that info about learning the installs? Definitely not a common direct thing for a player or prospect to say. I like his honesty. If there's no QB at 6 and Broncos want to trade there and Surtain for 6, I would take it. I don't see that as a reality, though. I mean, I just don't understand why you trade a quality player like Surtain. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Achilles says, thanks, Pat, for giving us these lives, by the way. Very insightful. Achilles, thanks for contributing and viewing, as always. Tariq, be nice. Be nice. Let's see. Would trading down upset or surprise you? Go G-Man. I think if they traded down and still got a quarterback in the first round that they were targeting and they correctly adjudged it, then I would like it. If they traded down and didn't get a quarterback up there, it would confuse me. Unless, of course, like you guys are outlining, like if you get the Vikings 11-23, or if you get, the Broncos, like a huge, crazy haul or whatever, those types of things are attractive, and roster building wise, it's something the Giants need. So I can see scenarios where, from a roster building standpoint, this is good. But I really do think you still need to you still need to go get your QB. And again, it all points to the quarterback to me. And I see Matt checked in with a $2 super sticker here. And Matt, thank you for that. And he says, "Hey Pat, what's the later with May and the G-Men?" And I personally think he's the guy based on people I've talked to. I had one trusted source tell me May is the guy. And I believe that the Giants are trying, as we heard, Sal Palantonio said the Giants are continuing to work the phones on a possible trade up, and that Joe Schoen told him directly that no trade's going to happen until these teams are on the clock, because they're actually waiting to see what happens ahead of them, what players the teams in front of them are going to pick. So because of that, it's a waiting game. Could it be JJ at 3 and then the Giants get May in another way? Could they get to 3 and take him there? Will the Patriots just take Drake May, as Tom Curran said could happen? And then the Giants, will they be going up for J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr., whatever the case is? Or will they end up getting them at 6? I talked to a personnel executive who said he thinks it would probably be a trade to 5 in order to protect their turf for that QB. And obviously we have one of our loyal viewers on one of our previous chats who I met down in Orlando said he said, this was just this viewer saying this to me. He said that he heard Joe Ortiz and Joe Schoen talking about organizing a deal that could potentially happen on draft night and kind of like agreeing to it in principle if it was coming to pass, like in the hallway or at the end of one of their meetings or whatever. So who knows? But it does seem like a plausible scenario. Hirsch, what's going on? Matt, my answer to you is that's my prediction for who they're going to take. But overall, I think they're going quarterback. Bombo says, with Daboll on the hot seat, do you think Shane would not want to trade next year's one to be safe, or do you think he is equally in the hot seat and willing to do anything to move up? I think he's under some pressure too, and I think this is about, you got to get this season right. You got to get this team right, and you got to get the now and the future right somehow. Hank said, Pat, did you see that live stream with Caleb? Oh, yeah, right, exactly. LJ said, I suggested we not play DJ at all this year due to that injury clause. They didn't go over well with some fans. I think that's a reasonable point by you, LJ. Dan says, regardless of who they pick, what is the floor for this season where Daboll and Shane can justify keeping their jobs? I don't know. What do you think it should be? You know, is it 7 wins, 6 wins, 5 wins? Like, last year was not just losing. It was also a terrible leadership, especially from the head coach, a bad dysfunctional environment, terrible roster construction, especially in the offensive line. So it was hard to get any worse than what they did last year. So a lot about the operation needs to improve, and wins and losses is a huge part of it, but it's also more than that. JJ and Drake's bust probability are pretty high, like DJ, that will have to validate that high value, says Tariq. Hunter says New England media is tough, makes it impossible to succeed. For Mac to succeed. Well, Mac Jones has his own issues. You talk to people. I don't think that's the reason he didn't succeed, Hunter, but it's definitely a tough market. Jerry says the New York beat reporter stayed respectful while dealing with Kadarius Toney. They can't be that harsh. Jeff says, hey, Pat, have you ever been the victim of a smokescreen? And if so, what did you learn from it? Jeff, great question. I've never been somebody who has reported outright something that turned out to be a 100% untrue thing told to me to create a smokescreen for another team. I have not. I've been told things that didn't sound right to me and I haven't used, but I've never been victimized like that. But I have learned through the years of being told things that either didn't come to pass, but one thing I learned, Jeff, was I heard during that head coaching search before they hired Daboll that Joe Schoen wanted Brian Daboll, but that the Dolphins were viewing Daboll as a leading candidate in that search. And I heard from multiple people that Daboll was having, it was a tough decision. Maybe Miami was a better fit, not sure, this and that. And so I couched it. I just said several league sources, believed at that time that Daboll was a leading candidate for the Dolphins, among the leading candidates for a Dolphins job or something. So at that point, it didn't look like he was headed to the Giants, even though obviously he and Shane as a package deal made a lot of sense and was possibly going to happen. And the next day, everything changed and a lot changed. But from my best vantage point, what I had been told the day before was accurate, but things had changed in 24 hours and shifted. So I learned from that this idea of, be aware of getting the full, maybe of continuing to work to get the full scope of something. If something's not, even if you hear it reliably and from several sources or multiple sources, continue to try to make sure something is ironclad. And maybe in a process like that, in those coaching searches where it's going to continue to evolve. So there are a lot of unknowns that could pop up. So you have to really understand what's worth reporting and not reporting in the moment. That said, during that time, a week prior to that, or 3 weeks prior to that, I had heard Sean Payton was going to step down from New Orleans, and I didn't go with it because I felt like if I was going to report that, I needed to hear it from the horse's mouth, run it down, confirm it, and double confirm it. And I got some pushback on some things, and so I didn't go with it, even though I heard it very reliably. And then it got reported that he was stepping down. So there's one thing I went with that happened, or one thing I didn't go with that I would have broken that was 100% true, and I didn't use it for a certain reason. And then another thing I went with, it turns out things change and it doesn't pan out that way, right? So you kind of learn from those different issues or situations. Hunter says, whoever we draft tonight, please get them on the pod ASAP. I will try. Starboy says, this is the best Giants content in a long time. Appreciate you, Pat. Let's go, May. Thank you, Starboy. I appreciate you saying that. Mike says, what installs was JJ talking about? I missed that. Mike, there's a clip on Instagram of JJ telling Rich Eisen that well, actually, I'll just play it for you here. Here it is. This is JJ McCarthy talking to Rich Eisen. Here we go.
You're going? Any idea? I mean, I have somewhat of an idea. New York Giants, I've spent the most time with. They're a phenomenal staff. Love Coach Dable. Love, Mr. Shane. Love Coach Tierney, Coach Kafka, Chicago guy. Just being able to go in there, pretty much know most of the install because Coach Dable came from Alabama and Coach Gaddis came to Michigan from Alabama. So it's similar formations, motions, plays, all that stuff. So being able to get that install in has been great. I met with them twice. It's been amazing.
So that was the install comment that we were referring to earlier, Mike. All right, I'm just going to skip through the rest of these, and then we're going to get out of here as I prepare to head down to the Giants facility and get ready. So Entertainer says in response to Hunter bringing up Surtain, and Hunter said, I doubt Surtain is on the block. And Entertainer says NFL teams don't trade good players, mostly not the NBA. It's not the NBA. DJ Moore was a panic move and an outlier. Bill says, I just don't want Tommy DeVito to go away, but I think it's inevitable. So do I. Let's see. Matt says, let's go blue. Brad says May is better than McCarthy. What is Life says, thanks for the stream, sir. Does a world exist where Drew Lock becomes an all-pro caliber quarterback if we draft Neighbors, Odunze, or Marvin Harrison Jr.? I don't think so. What is Life? I actually think even though Drew has some good football in him, I think he's here for exactly what it looks like he's here for, which is to be a bridge and a stopgap and a guy who gets you through to when your next quarterback plays. And that quarterback is somebody I think they're going to draft today. D-Kid says, last thing, do you think my hopes of landing Penix are gone? It's okay to be honest. I can take it. D-Kid, I think Penix is on the board for the Giants as a potential pick. I don't know whether the lack of the top 30 visit is that he's not their guy or if it's part of them trying to not be too obvious that they want to take him if he's there at 6. If I had to rank them right now, I would say Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr. That's how but I did talk to somebody during this process who said that the Giants like J.J. McCarthy, but not at the top of the draft, right? So now that's one person, okay? This is why I say to you guys, you hear so many different things about this. You have to be careful, right? So, anything could be a smokescreen. Anything could be like try to throw somebody off the scent. All those things. My best view of it is I'm not buying anyone telling me the Giants are out on a quarterback or out on a certain quarterback. I think they want a quarterback. They're chasing a quarterback. They know they need a quarterback. They're going to go get a quarterback somehow. And my order is Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Penix Jr., but would not surprise me if it ended up being May, Penix Jr., McCarthy. Wouldn't, right? It wouldn't. And listen, if it ends up being JJ and that was their guy all along and they liked that it was out there that May might be the guy to help them get JJ, so be it, you know. But to me, where I feel my point is I don't intend to and believe I'm being fooled into it being anything other than a QB. Hunter says, is this whole divorce thing? Oh, sorry, one sec. RJ says, when you anticipate knowing the pick, before the draft starts or only when we are on the clock? Probably closer to when the team is on the clock because, like we said, teams ahead of the Giants are even waiting to see who's going to go ahead of their pick before entertaining potential trade offers. So probably be closer, but we will see. Richard said Penix would be nice. Hunter says, is the Waller divorce holding up his decision with us? Definitely think something that serious in his life is a factor, but I don't know exactly the X's and O's there. Zach says, have a good day, Pat. Thanks for the stream. You got it. Bill says, thanks for the show, Pat. Go do what you got to do. Candy says, you don't give up Easter for a guy you don't really want. JJ is their guy. Candy, I agree with that. The Mara family spending Easter Sunday on a football field. Joey B says, Pat, I think this is the best content on all of Giants media. I love what you're doing. I'll always support it. I appreciate you being kind of mean and everyone on here. Joey, thank you so much for saying that, man. Such high praise from you as such a diehard Giants fan, somebody who consumes so much Giants content and follows the team so closely. And you would know. And like I said, guys, go see Joey on Friday at Reds in Carlstadt. He's going to be there competing to defend his championship belt and his title there. So go to Reds on Friday night. If you want to have some laughs, have some fun. Joe will be there on Reds. Joey B speaking for me. I didn't say it, but he did. That other guy earlier who said you are clickbait can suck it. Let's go, Joe. Let's go. Where Are My Entertainers says, thanks for the show. Awesome stuff. Have fun and good luck. Terry Hall says, I missed the chat, but is this 3-team trade rumor true? Terry, it would make sense if the Patriots were going to trade back to the Giants at 6 to come back to the Cardinals at 4 to protect if they want to still get their quarterback there and still get assets from New York. That would be kind of like what the Cardinals did last year, right? And to get Paris Johnson and trading back and then back up. And so that is possible. Jacob says, Pat, what did your wife want on that phone call earlier? Wasn't my wife. Have some more faith in me. Let's see. Jacob says, did Harrison Jr.'s camp call you back? What do you think? Jacob says, Pat, you're a real G for doing this. Appreciate all you do for this fan base with your voice. Thank you so much. Jerry says, Tiki Barber will be announcing the pick tomorrow. Oh, interesting. Saquon's new buddy. Hunter says, this was a great 3 hours, Pat. I got to go. Thanks again. Hopefully see you after the draft. Thank you. Hendrick says, are Giants really going to trade it for a QB? I believe so. If not, I still think they take one. And Dano says, love the show, Pat. We have gone 3 hours plus, and I can't thank you guys enough for being here for the NFL Draft. Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard, special here on draft day. Please go buy and drink Estate 98 coffee. It's an Esencia Day Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798, the year 1798. Go to their TikTok account. I think it's Drink Estate 98, but just type Estate 98 into TikTok. Go there and buy it through their TikTok shop. It's a great and quick and easy way to buy it. It takes 3 seconds to make a nice coffee. I drink it all the time. You can even heat it up, and it's just as good hot as it is cold. Thank you so much. If you missed part of what we did here, first, you can go see my story on the New York Daily News website that outlines exactly what I believe about what the Giants are going to do and why. Also, go and rewind and watch the beginning of this podcast and this live stream. And I get into great detail about the ramifications, the variables, the actions, the signs of why it's all pointing towards a quarterback. My prediction is Drake May. I believe ultimately the general prediction is, though, it's a quarterback. Thank you so much for being here, guys. OG, I'll get out of here on this. He says, great content, Pat. Thank you. Really appreciate you, OG. And Candy says, I retired and moved to Costa Rica, play golf, and listen to Pat. What a life. Candy, you're a real one. Everybody, thanks for the super chats and the super stickers. Really appreciate you. And I will see you, okay? The plan will be after the Giants pick, I will try my best, if the time allows for it, to do a YouTube live after the first round tonight. If I don't have time or it's too late or whatever the case may be, I will set the table for it to happen early tomorrow, and we'll get on and do it then. Thanks again. See you for the draft tonight. P Leonard NYDN on X, on Twitter. P Leonard NYDN. See you there.